Benjamin Martin was still holding the folder when Kristen set his duffel bag outside the front door. It landed on the porch with a soft thump. His work boots were tied to the handle by their laces, and one struck the white railing before hanging there. "You packed my room?" he asked. Kristen kept one hand on the door. At 58, she had perfected a calm expression that made every argument look like something happening entirely to the other person. "It hasn't been your room for years, Benjamin. I slept there last night. You stayed there last night. That's different." Behind her, Melissa stood in the hallway with her car keys and Bradley's old leather document case tucked under one arm. She was 33, 7 years older than Benjamin, and had spent the morning speaking in the patient voice she used when she'd already arranged the outcome. "We talked about this," Melissa said. "No, you two talked. I sat at the kitchen table while you explained it." Kristen glanced toward the neighboring house. Mrs. Bell's curtain had moved twice since the duffel bag came outside. "Keep your voice down." Benjamin looked at the folder in his hand. It contained the transfer papers for Split Rail Lanes, a boarded-up bowling alley at 214 Cottonwood Road. It also contained a county notice, a list of code repairs, and a payment demand totaling $74,000. The deadline was 60 days away. Melissa had called it his fair inheritance. She had received Bradley's half of Martin equipment, which came with a clean building, active customer accounts, and 4 employees who knew how to keep it running. Kristen kept the debt-free house, Bradley's savings, and nearly everything inside except the tools already assigned to the business. They'd spent less than an hour explaining those parts. They'd spent most of the morning explaining why Benjamin should be grateful for an alley that hadn't opened since Bradley became ill. "You signed," Melissa said. Benjamin looked at her. "You told me the alternative was selling it through the estate and taking the taxes out of anything I might get. That was the alternative. You also said it was worth almost nothing. It is worth almost nothing. Then why did I have to decide today?" Melissa shifted the document case higher under her arm. She didn't answer at once, and Benjamin noticed. Melissa always answered quickly when she liked the question. Kristen did it for her. "Because the estate has to be settled. We can't leave everything hanging because you're upset." Bradley had been dead for 9 months. Benjamin had spent the first 3 helping Kristen sort medical statements, cancel appointments, return rented equipment, and answer calls from people who didn't yet know. After that, Melissa began holding meetings with an accountant and an estate attorney. Benjamin learned about most of them afterward. He'd believed the delay meant the family was being careful. That morning, he understood they had simply been getting ready. "Where am I supposed to go?" he asked. "There's an apartment over the alley," Melissa said. Kristen's eyes flicked toward her. That was another detail Benjamin hadn't been told until after he signed. "The pipes are shut off," he said. "The power might not even be connected." "You're good with practical things," Kristen said. "Your father always said that." It was the first kind thing she'd said about him all morning, and she used it like a hand at his back. Benjamin stared past her into the house. Bradley's green jacket still hung on the peg near the garage door. His coffee mug sat upside down beside the sink. Melissa had put a yellow sticker under it during the inventory, though nobody had bothered to ask Benjamin if he wanted it. He had lived in that house after coming back to Thermopolis to help during Bradley's illness. He had taken his father to appointments in Casper, cleaned the oxygen machine, and slept lightly enough to hear the bedroom bell. Kristen had thanked him then. Melissa had told him she didn't know how he did it. Now the bell was gone, the hospital bed was gone, and apparently Benjamin was gone too. Melissa stepped onto the porch. "You're making this uglier than it needs to be. I'm standing next to my belongings in a bag. You accepted property. Nobody forced you." Benjamin lifted the folder. "You put a deadline in front of me and said Dad wanted me to have it. He did want you to have it. How do you know?" Melissa tapped the document case. "Because the devise is clear." The words sounded borrowed. Benjamin imagined her repeating it after the attorney. Kristen said, "Bradley knew you loved that place." That part was true, which made the rest harder to sort. When Benjamin was younger, the alley had been the one place where Bradley seemed to have enough time. At home, his father was always leaving for a service call or reading an equipment invoice. At Split Rail, he'd stand behind the pin setters with a rag over one shoulder and explain why a machine missed its cycle. Benjamin would hand him a wrench, usually the wrong one, and Bradley would send him back without getting irritated. On quiet afternoons, they bowled on lane 12 because it was closest to the service door. Bradley never cared about the score. He watched where Benjamin placed his feet. "Start where you are," he used to say. The lane can't do anything until you let go. Benjamin hadn't thought about that in years. He lowered the folder. Did Dad know about the 74,000? Kristen's lips tightened. Melissa answered. The county notices started while he was sick. That's not what I asked. He knew the building needed work. Did he know they'd give me 60 days? We don't know exactly what he knew, Kristen said. Those last months were difficult. Benjamin looked from one woman to the other. Kristen wanted the conversation finished. Melissa wanted him away before he examined the division too closely. Neither of them thought the bowling alley would save him. They expected the deadline to do what they didn't want to do themselves. He picked up the duffel bag. Kristen's shoulders eased. That hurt more than the bag on the porch. Is there anything of Dad's in the alley? He asked. Old junk, probably, Melissa said. The appraisal included the contents. I mean, personal things. I haven't been inside. Benjamin turned to Kristen. She looked down at the porch boards. He kept some work clothes there. Maybe records. I don't know. Where are the keys? Melissa opened the document case and removed a ring with 5 keys. A faded wooden bowling pin hung from it. The white paint had worn away around the bottom, leaving bare wood the color of toast. She held the ring out, but didn't release it when Benjamin took hold. If you can't meet the deadline, call me before things get worse, she said. I may know someone who'd take the property as it stands. You already know someone? I said I may. Who? A developer who buys distressed buildings. It's not an offer. Benjamin kept his hand on the keys. Then don't call it help. Melissa released them. Kristen stepped back into the house. You can come for the rest of your clothes later, after everyone's had time to settle down. Benjamin glanced at his duffel. You said you packed my room. Most of it. The front door closed before he reached the steps. His truck sat at the curb with half a tank of fuel and a cracked windshield he had been meaning to replace. Bradley's green jacket was still visible through the narrow window beside the door. For a moment, Benjamin considered knocking again. Then the deadbolt turned. He loaded the duffel behind the passenger seat and drove across Thermopolis with the folder on the seat beside him. The town was bright and dry under the afternoon sun. Wind pushed dust along the gutters. At a stoplight near Broadway, 2 tourists in matching hats crossed in front of him, carrying towels from the hot springs. Everything ordinary kept happening. Benjamin passed the equipment business on the edge of town. The sign still read, Martin Equipment in red letters. Melissa's car was already parked outside. She had left the house before him and taken another route so she wouldn't have to follow his truck. Split-rail lanes stood near the old industrial road, a long cinder-block building with a shallow brown roof. Plywood covered the front windows. The roadside sign had lost 3 letters, leaving split-rail land. Dead weeds filled the cracks around the entrance. Benjamin parked beside the front doors and stayed in the truck. He had just become the owner of a place he couldn't afford to keep and couldn't afford to abandon. If the county enforced every item in the notice, the deadline would take the building before he had time to understand it. If Melissa's developer bought it, she could point to the sale price and say the family had been fair. That seemed to matter to her, more than the money perhaps. He opened the folder again. The repair list included the boiler, emergency lighting, rear exits, roof drainage, damaged wiring, and parts of the fire system. Some items needed inspection, others required proof of correction. The taxes sat on a separate page with penalties already added. At the bottom was the appraiser's photograph of the building. It had been taken in winter, when dirty snow covered the parking lot. The value was low enough to make the division look almost generous, if someone ignored the costs. Benjamin put the papers back. The front key entered the lock, but wouldn't turn. He tried the second key. Nothing. The third moved a quarter inch and stopped. He leaned his forehead against the plywood door. You always did pull before you pushed. Benjamin turned. A woman stood beside a white service van parked near the road. She wore gray work pants and a dark t-shirt under an open canvas jacket. Her black hair was tied at the back of her neck. A metal toolbox rested by her boot. He recognized Sarah Rivas, though he hadn't seen her since Bradley's funeral. She was 29 now and carried herself with the steady balance of someone used to lifting awkward machinery. How long have you been there? He asked. Long enough to watch you lose an argument with a door. What are you doing here? She nodded toward the building. I heard Melissa transferred it to you. Who told you? Small town. Also, she called me. That caught him. Why? She wanted to know whether any of the machines could be sold. Benjamin looked at the toolbox. And? I told her I couldn't answer without inspecting them. So she sent you? No, she told me not to waste my time. Sarah walked to the entrance. She put one hand against the right door and pointed at the frame. Push near the top while you turn the key. The foundation settles toward the parking lot. Bradley kept saying he'd fix the hinge. Benjamin used the third key again. He pressed his shoulder to the door, pushed high, and felt the bolt scrape free. The door opened 3 inches, dragging a pile of envelopes and dust behind it. It wasn't much, but it was the first thing that had worked all day. A stale, cold smell came through the gap. Old carpet, machine oil, damp wood, and something sour from the snack counter. Benjamin pushed harder until there was room to enter. Light from the doorway reached across the lobby. Plastic seats stood under gray sheets. The shoe counter was empty. Beyond it, the 12 lanes disappeared into shadow. Sarah remained outside. "You coming in?" Benjamin asked. "That depends." "On what?" "Whether you plan to strip the place and sell the machines." "I don't have a plan. I do repair work for 3 alleys and a skating rink. Split rail was most of my winter income before Bradley closed. If you reopen, I'll have service work here again. If you sell the machines, I need to know before somebody tears them out wrong." Benjamin looked into the dark building. "Can they run? Some probably can. How many?" "I won't guess. Dad would have guessed. Your dad knew when he was guessing. Other people didn't." That sounded so much like Bradley that Benjamin almost smiled. Sarah picked up her toolbox. "I'll inspect the back at no charge today. After today we make an agreement. I have almost no money. Then don't agree to anything you can't pay." She stepped past him and stopped inside the lobby. Her face changed when she saw the lanes. She had expected dust and damage. She hadn't expected the silence to bother her. Benjamin saw it, but he didn't mention it. He found the electrical panel behind the rental counter. Most of the labels were written in Bradley's square handwriting. Concourse, masking units, pin setters, 1 through 4, boiler pump. A strip of red tape covered the main breaker. "Don't touch that yet," Sarah said. "I wasn't going to. You had your hand on it. I was reading." "With your fingers?" She opened her toolbox and handed him a flashlight. "Check the rear exit on the north side. Don't step on any dark ceiling tiles. If you smell gas, come back. What are you checking? Whether this place is sleeping or dead?" Benjamin walked along the approach area, sweeping the flashlight over the floor. Dust softened every surface. A paper cup lay on its side beneath a chair. Someone had left a pair of red and blue bowling shoes on the return rack, tied together as if they expected to come back after closing. At lane 12, the beam caught a narrow service door near the pin setter wall. The old wooden bowling pin on his key ring matched a faded outline painted above it. Benjamin tried the smallest key. The lock clicked. Inside was a cramped maintenance room with shelves of belts, oil cans, fuses, and labeled jars of bolts. Bradley's brown coveralls hung from a hook. A clipboard rested on the workbench beneath a film of dust. Benjamin touched the sleeve of the coveralls, then let it go. "Sarah," he called. Her footsteps came down the approach. She stopped beside him and shone her light at the clipboard. "That's his maintenance log." Benjamin lifted it carefully. The top page held dates, machine numbers, and short notes in Bradley's handwriting. Most meant nothing to him yet. Sarah looked toward the dark pin setter line. "If he left records, we've got a chance of starting something without breaking it." Benjamin set the log on the cleanest part of the bench. Then he took Bradley's coveralls off the hook, shook away the dust, and hung them beside the door where the afternoon light could reach them. "What do we do first?" he asked. Sarah handed him a broom. "First, we make a path." They worked from the front doors toward the lanes, filling black contractor bags with old receipts, food wrappers, and mouse-chewed paper. Sarah opened every bag before tying it. She was looking for machine parts, keys, or records that someone else might mistake for trash. Benjamin swept around the rental counter. A plastic name tag appeared beneath a pile of league schedules. Ben, floor help. The letters had faded from blue to gray. He rubbed the dust away with his thumb. Bradley had made the tag during Benjamin's first summer, working at the alley. Benjamin had been old enough to handle shoes and wipe tables, but Bradley hadn't trusted him with the register. Sarah noticed the tag and held out her hand. "You were floor help? For 2 summers. Bradley said you worked here all through school." He liked the bigger version. She handed it back. "He did that." Benjamin waited for her to explain, but she bent over another bag. What did he say about me? Mostly that you could fix anything if you stopped getting impatient. That sounds more like him. He said you had good hands. Benjamin slipped the name tag into his shirt pocket. He never said that to me. He probably thought you knew. He thought people knew a lot of things. Sarah looked toward the maintenance room. Yes, he did. By late afternoon, they had cleared a walkway from the entrance to the north exit. The emergency door opened outward, but stopped against a ridge of dirt and dead leaves. Benjamin pushed while Sarah worked a flat shovel beneath the bottom edge. When the door finally swung free, sunlight cut across the back wall. Dust moved through the beam, and cold air passed between the building's two open exits. Sarah leaned on the shovel. There. One item off the list, assuming the frame isn't bent. One item cleaned, not approved. You're learning. Benjamin found a marker behind the counter and drew a line through rear exit access on a copy of the repair notice. It didn't change what he owed. It didn't satisfy an inspector. Still, the mark made the page look less fixed. His phone rang as he was carrying bags to the dumpster. Melissa's name appeared on the screen. He let it ring twice, then answered. He wanted her to know he was busy. He also wanted to know why she was calling. That was the pattern with Melissa. She could pull him into a conversation simply by leaving him unsure what she might say. "Where are you?" she asked. "At the alley," I figured. "Kristen found another box of your things. I'll pick it up tomorrow. She doesn't want anyone coming by tomorrow." Benjamin shifted the bag to his other hand. "Then why did you call?" "There's a buyer who may want to see the property this week. You said there wasn't an offer. There isn't." He asked whether he could walk through. "No." "You haven't heard what he might pay. No one's walking through yet." Sarah passed him with two smaller bags. She didn't look at him, but she slowed enough to hear. Melissa lowered her voice. "Benjamin, don't get attached because you found an old bowling shirt. I found a shovel. I'm serious. So am I. The man builds distribution warehouses. He doesn't care about the condition. That matters when you own something nobody else wants." Benjamin looked at the long building. In the afternoon light, every crack in the block showed. The roof edge sagged above the gutters. Melissa's description wasn't entirely wrong, and that gave it weight. "How did he know I owned it?" Benjamin asked. There was a pause. "I mentioned the transfer." "When?" "This morning. Before or after I signed." Another pause, shorter this time. "Before," she said. Sarah stopped near the dumpster. Benjamin tightened his grip on the phone. "You had a buyer waiting before I accepted it. I had a possible exit for you. You had a plan. I knew you'd need one." He almost told her to keep the box of clothes. The words rose quickly and he could hear how satisfying they would sound. Then he pictured his winter coat, his birth certificate, and the small wooden case containing Bradley's fishing lures. All of it was still inside Kristen's house because Benjamin had never taken control of his own things. "When can I get the box?" he asked. Melissa relaxed into the practical question. "I can bring it by tonight. Bring everything. That may take more than one trip, then take more than one." "Benjamin, don't sort it, don't label it, just bring it." She was quiet. "All right," she said. "But I want to talk about the buyer, not tonight." He ended the call before she could turn his answer into the start of another negotiation. Sarah dropped the bags into the dumpster. "You can say it," Benjamin told her. "I don't know your sister. That's never stopped anyone." Sarah closed the lid. "She expected you to ask permission." "For what? To say no?" Benjamin put his bag beside hers. "I did say no. After she called. After she explained why your answer should be yes. Then you gave her a time to come here. She has my things." "Exactly." He didn't like that she was right, especially because she said it without pleasure. They went back inside. The boiler room stood behind the pin setters, separated by a block wall and a metal fire door. Sarah checked the air near the threshold, then used a small detector from her toolbox before entering. Benjamin followed with the flashlight. The boiler was an old cast iron unit with orange rust around several fittings. A bucket sat under one pipe. The bucket was dry. Sarah crouched beside the pump and removed its cover. Power was shut down properly. "That's good." "Can it be repaired?" "Probably." "How much?" "I said I wouldn't guess. You also said probably. That's not a price." Benjamin aimed the light while she turned the pump shaft by hand. "Bradley replaced this bearing before closing," she said. "See the clean edge? You did it? We did it together." "When?" Late summer, the year before he died. Benjamin had been in Casper that week, taking Bradley to a specialist. He remembered returning home to find his father exhausted and angry about the appointment. Bradley had gone to the alley the next morning, without telling anyone. "You were still working here then?" Whenever he could open. "I thought the building had stayed closed after spring. He came in some afternoons. We serviced machines even when there were no customers." "Why?" Sarah glanced up. "Because machines don't improve when you ignore them." "No. Why didn't he tell us?" He didn't want Kristen knowing how often he was here. The answer settled badly. Kristen had told Benjamin that Bradley no longer had the strength to come to the alley. Melissa had used the closure as proof that the business was finished. Benjamin had believed both of them because he'd been too busy helping with the illness to ask Bradley directly. "He could barely walk from the truck," Benjamin said. "Some days, yes." "And you let him work back here?" Sarah stood. "I didn't let Bradley do anything. I drove him home when he got tired. I carried his tools. Once I took his keys for 2 days, and he called me every 4 hours until I gave them back. You should have told me. I thought he had." "He hadn't." "I know that now." Benjamin set the flashlight on a shelf harder than he meant to. It rolled, struck a can, and fell to the floor. The light stayed on, pointing at the boiler. Sarah picked it up. "He didn't tell me everything either," she said. "He stopped putting the full repair list in the office because he thought I'd spend my own money on parts. He was right. You spent your own money? Not much. How much? That's between me and the dead man who didn't pay me back. If it was for this building, it's between you and the owner." Sarah studied him for a moment. $680. Belts, 2 switches, and a control board I found used. Benjamin took out his phone and typed the amount into a note. "I can't pay it now. I didn't ask. I will. Get the boiler working first. I said I will." Something changed in her expression. Not trust exactly, but attention. "All right," she said. "Then I'll keep the receipts." They worked until the outside light began to fade. Sarah removed the pump and set it on the bench for cleaning. Benjamin carried wet cardboard from a storage closet near the rear stairway. Behind it, he found a narrow door with a lock shaped like the smallest key on Bradley's ring. The key turned easily. A staircase rose to the manager's apartment. The air smelled closed and dry rather than rotten. Benjamin went first, brushing cobwebs away with the broom. The apartment had 2 rooms, a bathroom, and a narrow kitchen overlooking the parking lot. A brown couch stood beneath the front window. Bradley's old desk faced the lanes through a large interior window, though plywood on the other side blocked most of the view. A calendar still hung beside the refrigerator. Bradley had circled several league nights before his illness forced the alley to close. A note in the margin read, "Call Sarah about 10. "What's 10? Benjamin asked. She stood at the top of the stairs behind him. "Pin setter 10. It used to drop the right corner pin. The refrigerator was unplugged and empty. The kitchen cabinets held 2 chipped mugs, instant coffee, a skillet, and a box of crackers that had expired long ago. Benjamin opened the faucet. Nothing came out. Sarah tested the bathroom floor with her boot. "It's better than downstairs. It's not a high bar. Roof looks dry, no ceiling stains over the bedroom." Benjamin walked into the smaller room. A metal bed frame stood against the wall without a mattress. In the closet, he found a clean blanket sealed inside a plastic bag. Did Dad sleep here? Sometimes. When? When he and Kristen argued. Benjamin turned. How often? I wasn't keeping count. Did everyone know except me? No. Most people didn't pay attention to where Bradley slept. I lived in his house, and you were driving him to doctors. He probably didn't want you carrying another problem. Benjamin looked through the bedroom window at the pale sky. That explanation was kinder than the others, which made him want to accept it. He had spent years doing that. Whenever Bradley stayed silent, Benjamin supplied a reason that hurt less. Whenever Kristen decided something without him, he called it efficiency. Whenever Melissa took over, he let her, then resented her for being in control. He had called it keeping the family together. From where he stood now, it looked a lot like waiting to be assigned a place. A vehicle entered the lot below. Melissa's car stopped beside Benjamin's truck. "She's early," he said. Sarah checked the time. "By 6 minutes. That counts as early for her." They went downstairs. Melissa had opened her trunk. 4 cardboard boxes filled it, each sealed with tape. A garment bag lay across the back seat. "I brought what I could fit," she said. Benjamin checked the labels: clothes, papers, bedroom desk, misks. You labeled them. I had to know what went where. They all go here. Melissa looked past him through the open front doors. You've been cleaning. Sarah's inspecting the machines. Melissa's eyes moved to Sarah. I thought you said an inspection would cost money. I said a proper sale inspection would, Sarah replied. This isn't for a sale. Melissa looked back at Benjamin. Can we speak privately? No, it's family business. Sarah picked up the box marked clothes. I'll put this upstairs. Melissa watched her go. Upstairs? There's an apartment. I know there's an apartment. Then why are you surprised? I'm surprised you're planning to stay. Benjamin lifted the box marked papers. It was heavier than expected. I need somewhere to sleep. You could have asked for a few more days at the house. The suggestion was so familiar that he nearly took it seriously. Melissa could offer access to something she had helped remove, then expect gratitude for the favor. No, he said. I'm getting the rest tomorrow. Kristen won't like that. She doesn't have to. Melissa closed the trunk after he removed the last box. The developer can solve the immediate problem. At least meet him. Did he pay for the appraisal? Her face changed just enough. Benjamin had guessed. Until then, he hadn't known. His company ordered a preliminary valuation, she said. That's normal when someone is considering a property. Before the estate division, he was interested before Dad died. Did Dad know? I don't know. You have the business, Kristen has the house, and savings. And the person interested in this place helped decide what it was worth. That isn't what happened. Then bring me the appraisal request and every message you exchange with him. Melissa folded her arms. You're accusing me now? I'm asking for papers. You signed the division. I know. That was the cost he couldn't place on either of them. His signature was there. He had wanted Bradley's alley so badly, and wanted the meeting over so badly, that he hadn't demanded time to examine anything. Melissa looked toward Sarah, who had returned to the lobby. You're filling his head with suspicions, she said. Sarah set the empty box down. He came with his own head. Benjamin held out his hand. The keys to my remaining things. Melissa stared at him. You don't have keys to the house. I had one yesterday. Kristen changed the lock last month. That explained why none of the keys on his personal ring had opened the door that morning. Another fact withheld because nobody expected him to test it. Then be there at 10, he said. I'll collect everything with you watching. Melissa opened her car door. I'll send the appraisal messages. All of them, if I can find them. You found a buyer before I found the front door key. You can find them. She got into the car without answering. Benjamin watched her drive away. His hands were shaking, though the evening wasn't cold. Sarah stood beside the boxes. That was better. It didn't feel better. It usually doesn't at first. They carried the rest upstairs. Benjamin found an extension cord in the office and ran it from a working service outlet Sarah had safely tested. He plugged in an old floor lamp from the apartment. Its shade leaned to one side, but the bulb came on. The light reached the couch, the boxes, and the sealed blanket Bradley had left in the closet. Benjamin took the faded name tag from his pocket. He set it on the desk, then looked through the dusty interior window toward the dark lanes below. Tomorrow, he said, we find out what still belongs here. The next morning, Benjamin woke on the couch with the sealed blanket pulled over him and the floor lamp still burning. Someone knocked on the front doors below. He checked his phone. It was 7:14. Sarah stood outside with 2 coffees and a paper sack. When Benjamin let her in, she handed him 1 cup and looked at his wrinkled clothes. You slept here. I said I would. I thought you'd buy a mattress first. With what? She gave him the sack. Inside were 2 breakfast burritos wrapped in foil. I'm adding this to what the owner owes me, she said. Keep the receipt. That was a joke. I still owe you $680. Sarah carried her toolbox toward the pin setters. Then you can keep track of the burrito yourself. Benjamin followed her. I'm reopening. She stopped. He had expected an argument, or at least a question. Sarah only took a drink of coffee. How much of it? She asked. As much as we can make safe. For how long? Long enough to find out if people will come back. That isn't a time. 60 days. Sarah looked at the lanes, then at the ceiling. The county deadline is 60 days. You need inspections before that. I know. You need money before inspections. I know. You can't run customers past open wiring or a dead fire system. I know. Do you? Benjamin set his coffee on the ball return. I called the county from upstairs before I came down. The repair total isn't one bill. The taxes and penalties are due in full. The code work has to pass, but I can use licensed contractors where the county requires them, and do the clearing and basic repairs myself. They'll inspect sections as they're ready. Sarah's cup paused near her mouth. You called already? They open at 7. Who did you speak to? A woman named Dana in building services. I know Dana. She said everybody knows you. That isn't always a compliment. She emailed the inspection order and the old service records. I want to start with the boiler and emergency paths, then electrical, then machines. Sarah put down her cup. Why machines before the roof? Because I can't make money with a dry roof and 12 dead lanes. You can't make money with wet wiring either. The roof leaks over the kitchen and west storage, not over the lanes. You checked? I was awake when it rained around 4. Sarah glanced at the front windows. It rained, not for long. She seemed annoyed that he had learned something about the building without her. Then she nodded once. All right. Show me the inspection order. They spread the county pages across the rental counter. Sarah read each line carefully and marked items that needed a licensed trade. Benjamin marked the ones they could start themselves. The list was still too long. The amount due was still larger than anything he could reach. Yet, separating the work changed it from a sentence into jobs. Sarah tapped the boiler line. I can rebuild the pump. I can't certify the gas connection. We'll hire someone for that part. With what money? I have $12,400 in savings. Sarah looked up sharply. That's all you have? It's more than I had after breakfast. You cannot put all of it into this place. I wasn't planning to. How much were you planning? Benjamin didn't answer. That's what I thought, she said. You need parts, heat, insurance, taxes, and someone qualified to inspect the gas line. You also need food. There are crackers upstairs. They expired before you owned the building. He folded the county notice. Can you get the boiler pump working? Yes. Then do that. I'll start on the rear exits and gutters. You have to collect your belongings at 10. I'll go at 10. You forgot. I didn't forget. He had forgotten. Sarah knew it, but she allowed him the lie. They worked for 2 hours. Benjamin cleared the second rear exit, then climbed a ladder beside the loading wall and pulled packed leaves from the gutter. The downspout was blocked with a bird's nest and years of roof grit. When it came loose, brown water poured over his gloves and down his sleeve. Sarah called from below. You still want the building? Ask me when I can feel my hand. You're supposed to work from the top down. I am at the top. I meant the blockage. I knew that. He hadn't. At 9:40, he washed at the utility sink using bottled water and changed into a clean shirt from one of the boxes. Sarah remained at the alley with the pump laid open on the maintenance bench. Kristen's house looked unchanged when Benjamin arrived. The porch had been swept. His duffel was no longer there. Bradley's jacket had disappeared from the peg visible through the side window. Melissa opened the door before he knocked. You're 6 minutes early, she said. That counts as early for me. She didn't smile. She stepped aside. 7 boxes stood in the hallway, along with the garment bag. Kristen sat at the dining table, sorting envelopes into neat piles. Your sister says you're sleeping there, she said. Upstairs. There's no water, not yet. No heat either. We're working on it. Kristen pressed the edges of the envelopes together. Bradley used that apartment when he needed quiet. It isn't meant to be a home. Benjamin looked at her hands. She knew he had learned where Bradley sometimes slept, and she wanted to define it before he asked anything. How often did he stay there? He said. I don't know. Sarah said he stayed after arguments. Kristen's mouth tightened at Sarah's name. Your father would leave rather than finish a conversation. That was one of his habits. Why didn't you tell me? What good would it have done? I lived here. You were helping. We didn't want to put you between us. Benjamin glanced toward Melissa. She was watching him carefully, hoping he wouldn't turn the collection into another fight. He understood then that being useful had been his place in the house. He drove, carried, cleaned, waited, and kept himself available. They called that being part of the family. But important information moved around him because they believed his role was to help with decisions, not share them. He had agreed to that role each time he accepted. Don't worry about it as an answer. Where's Dad's jacket? He asked. Kristen looked toward the garage door. I put it away. I'd like it. That jacket is mine. I didn't say it wasn't. Then why ask? Because you boxed my things and missed the one thing I would have chosen. Silence held around the table. Melissa picked up 2 boxes. I'll help load. Benjamin took the heaviest box from her. He carried everything to his truck without opening it. On the last trip, Melissa brought the garment bag and a large envelope. The appraisal messages, she said. All of them? Everything I found. Did the developer enter the alley? He walked the exterior with the appraiser. They looked through a window where one board was loose. When was that? About 2 months before Dad died. Did Dad approve it? Kristen did. Benjamin turned toward the house. Kristen remained inside. Melissa held out the envelope. Nobody broke in. Nobody moved anything. Why was the appraisal used for the estate if the buyer ordered it for his own project? Because it was recent. Getting another would have cost money. It valued the building as a warehouse site. It valued the real estate, not the business. There was no operating business. Benjamin took the envelope. That was the inconsistency he'd felt, but hadn't been able to name. The low figure might still be accurate. The building might truly be worth little, but the appraisal had answered the developer's question, not Benjamin's. It told them what the site was worth after the alley disappeared. Melissa watched him reach that conclusion. The machines were included, she said, at salvage value. They hadn't run in 2 years. I'm going to run them. Her face softened, and for a second she looked more worried than calculating. Ben, Dad couldn't keep that place open. Dad was sick before that. He was losing league business. Repairs cost more every year. I'm not trying to hurt you. Then stop arranging the answer before I've asked the question. She crossed her arms. What question? Whether it can still be an alley. He loaded the garment bag, closed the truck door, and left before she could explain why that was the wrong thing to want. Back at Split Rail, the lights behind the pin setters were on. Only 3 bulbs worked, but their glow showed the machinery in pieces and shadows. Sarah stood at lane 10, with her hands inside the pin setter housing. You found power, Benjamin said. I found one safe circuit. Don't touch the others. How's the pump? Cleaned. Bearing is usable. The seal isn't. Can you get one? By tomorrow. He showed her the appraisal envelope. She wiped her hands before taking it. They read the pages on the maintenance bench. The photograph showed the outer walls, parking lot, roof, and loading side. One image had been taken through a gap in the plywood. It showed lanes 3 through 8. There were no photographs of the machinery, no inventory, no test results. The report treated the equipment as material to be removed. Sarah turned the last page. They never came behind the lanes. Can we prove what works? We can try. Today? She looked at the open machine. Lane 10 needs a switch. 11 has a seized distributor. 12 is buried behind old storage. Start with 1. Which one? Lane 3 has the newest motor. They spent the next hour checking wiring from the service panel to the 3rd pin setter. Sarah tested each section before allowing Benjamin near it. He cleaned 2 optical sensors, tightened a loose terminal, and replaced a cracked belt with one from Bradley's labeled shelf. At the control desk, Sarah inserted a flat key. If it catches, hit stop, she said. What does catching sound like? You'll know. That isn't helpful. It sounds expensive. Benjamin stood beside the red stop button. Sarah remained at the machine, one hand raised where he could see it. Ready, she called. He turned the control. For half a second, nothing happened. Then the motor started. The pin setter shuddered, lifted the standing pins from its deck, and swept the lane. A chain rattled. A belt squealed. Benjamin reached toward the stop button, but Sarah held up a closed fist. Wait! The machine lowered a full rack. 10 pins settled into place beneath the weak overhead light. Sarah listened through one more cycle, then gave Benjamin the signal to stop. When the machinery went quiet, the silence felt different. 1 works, he said. 1 cycles, Sarah corrected. We haven't sent a ball through it, but it cycles. She tried not to smile. It cycles. Benjamin drew a line through machine status unknown on his own copy of the work list and wrote lane 3 cycles beside it. The appraisal hadn't proved the machines were worthless. It had simply never asked them to move. They turned next to Bradley's maintenance log. Sarah read entries while Benjamin sorted loose pages by date. Most recorded ordinary problems. Belt changes, pins replaced, oil patterns adjusted, calls about leak schedules. Near the back, Sarah slowed. What? Benjamin asked. She placed one finger beside a row of measurements. This isn't machine work. The same figures appeared on 3 different pages, entered months apart. Each line mentioned lane 12. Bradley had measured from the foul line to the rear wall, then from the rear wall to something he called the fixed line. Benjamin leaned closer. What's a fixed line? Not a bowling term. On the final page, Bradley had pressed hard enough with his pen to mark the paper underneath. Lane 12. Rear line must never be moved. Sarah read it twice. Did he ever mention this? Benjamin asked. No. Could it mean the pin setter line? He would have written pin setter. Benjamin looked toward lane 12. Old chairs, broken shelving, and stacked ceiling tiles blocked the approach behind it. At the far end, its pins stood in darkness. Why measure one lane more than once? He asked. Sarah closed the log carefully. Let's clear it and find out what he was protecting. They started with the chairs. 6 molded seats had been stacked across the approach. 2 were cracked. The others were still bolted to lengths of metal railing that made them awkward to move. Benjamin carried one end while Sarah walked backward with the other. Left, she said. I am going left. Your other left. There are only 2. And you chose wrong. They set the railing near the rental counter. Under it, they found a stack of old league score sheets and a cardboard box filled with ashtrays from before the town's indoor smoking ban. Nothing explained the measurements. The broken shelving came next. It had been placed across Lane 12's ball return, then covered with ceiling tiles and rolls of stained carpet. Benjamin separated usable wood from trash, while Sarah checked anything that might belong to the machinery. By noon, they could see the entire approach. Lane 12 looked like every other lane from the foul line. Its finish had gone dull, and dust covered the boards, but there was no obvious damage. 10 pins stood under the masking unit at the far end. Sarah walked along the side gutter until she reached the pit. She opened a service gate and disappeared behind the pin setter. Benjamin followed. The space was tighter than it was behind lane 11. A plywood partition ran from the outer wall to the back of the machine. Its paint matched the cinder block, but the material sounded different when Benjamin knocked on it. Hollow, he said. It's a service chase. What's in it? Probably wiring and the exhaust duct. Probably? Sarah aimed her flashlight through a narrow opening near the floor. I never opened it. Bradley told me to leave this partition alone. Benjamin looked at her. He said that? Once. I needed room to pull the distributor. He told me to work from the other side. Did you ask why? He was holding a wrench and staring at me until I moved. I chose to finish the repair. Benjamin examined the edges. The plywood had been screwed into a frame, then painted over. Several screw heads were covered by small circles of metal filler. A dark pencil line remained visible near the bottom. Sarah crouched beside it. This could be the rear line from the log. Can we open it? We can. The question is whether we should. It's my wall. It may contain live wiring. Benjamin ran the flashlight upward. A small electrical warning label had been fixed near the ceiling. Its ink had faded, but it was enough. We wait, he said. Sarah stood. Good. You sound surprised. I was preparing to take the drill away from you. I don't have the drill. You were looking at mine. They checked the pin setter without moving the partition. Lane 12's machine had been covered with a fitted canvas sheet. Under it, the metal was cleaner than the machines beside it. Bradley had removed the drive belt and tied it to the frame with a paper tag. Do not run until pit cleared. No date. No explanation. Benjamin searched the pit and found a broken section of wood beneath the curtain wall. It wasn't part of the machine. Sarah pulled it free and examined the clean edge. Somebody cut this, she said. Dad? Most likely. For the partition? Maybe. The piece fit the color and thickness of the hidden frame. That told them Bradley had changed something behind lane 12. It did not tell them what or why he had continued measuring it. Sarah returned the piece to the maintenance room and wrote its location in the log. Benjamin wanted to keep taking screws out until the wall gave him an answer. Instead, he covered the pin setter again. That restraint cost him more effort than the clearing had. They moved to lane 4. By the end of the day, 3 pin setters could complete a cycle. Lane 5 needed a motor capacitor. Lane 6 had a damaged cable. Lane 7 ran until the sweep stuck halfway down. Then Sarah shut it off before it bent anything. The failures were useful. Each one gave them a parts list instead of another unknown. At 6, Sarah spread the list on the counter. I can make 5 lanes reliable within a week, she said. Maybe 6. And the others? More parts, more time. What about 12? I'm not running 12 until we understand the note. Benjamin looked down the dark row. Could we make 11 usable without it? Eventually. I said 5 in a week. How many do we need to open? That depends on what opening means. People come in. They rent shoes. They bowl. They also use bathrooms, touch doors, buy drinks, trip over carpet, and expect the ceiling to remain above them. So 5 lanes and working bathrooms. And heat. Emergency lights, insurance, a fire inspection, clean shoes, a front counter that doesn't smell like a dead fryer. It smells like old grease. You didn't open the drain under it. Benjamin wrote each item beneath the machine list. Sarah watched him. You're really doing this? I said I was. You said it yesterday. Yesterday you also forgot your belongings. I retrieved them. Because I reminded you. He set down the pen. Do you want the work or not? Her answer came without hesitation. Yes. Then help me decide what's possible. Sarah pulled the paper back and drew a box around 5 items. Boiler, electrical safety, fire system, bathrooms, 5 lanes. Do those first. Everything else stays closed to customers. What about the kitchen? Sell packaged food and bottled drinks. Shoes? We clean what's usable and throw out anything with mold. Tables? 1 row, away from the damaged carpet. Benjamin nodded. 3 weeks. Sarah gave a short laugh. 4? 5, if parts arrive? The county deadline will be nearly gone. That's why you don't begin with customers. You begin with inspection. The next morning, the replacement boiler seal arrived at the parts counter across town. Benjamin paid for it and a set of emergency light batteries. He also paid a licensed gas technician to inspect the boiler connection. The technician spent 40 minutes testing lines, replaced 1 valve, and left with a check for $960. He said the boiler itself could be started after Sarah reinstalled the pump. Benjamin watched another piece of his savings leave in the man's shirt pocket. Sarah worked at the maintenance bench for most of the afternoon. She cleaned the housing, fitted the seal, and checked the rebuilt pump twice before carrying it into the boiler room. Benjamin held the light and passed her tools. 1/2-inch socket, she said. He handed it to her. She checked the size. First try. My hands improved overnight. They were fine before. Your listening was the issue. When the pump was connected, Sarah filled the system slowly. 1 fitting leaked. She drained the pressure, tightened it, and tried again. The second time, it held. They stood near the boiler while it warmed. Pipes knocked above them. The pump gave a low hum, then settled into a steady sound. Heat moved through a radiator in the manager's apartment and another near the front counter. Benjamin placed his hand against the metal fins. They were only warm. He kept his hand there anyway. Sarah sat on an overturned bucket. 1 working boiler, 1 certified gas connection, 1 old building that will now reveal every pipe leak it has. A drop of water struck the floor behind them. Benjamin looked up. Sarah closed her eyes. I shouldn't have said it. The leak came from a fitting near the ceiling. It was small enough to catch in a bucket, but it meant another repair. Benjamin set 1 beneath it. By evening, the apartment had warmed enough for him to remove his jacket. He opened the bedroom window for 10 minutes and wiped dust from the metal bed frame. Sarah brought up the county pages. Dana can send the fire inspector Thursday morning, she said. He'll tell us what has to be completed before a limited opening. Thursday works. If we book it, the file becomes active. It's already active, not in the same way. Right now, you're an owner with an order. Once you request an operating inspection, the county expects dates, contractors, and follow-through. Benjamin looked at the boxes from Kristen's house. He could still sell. He could take the developer's price, pay the taxes, and leave before every dollar he owned disappeared into pipes and wiring. The radiator clicked as warm water moved through it. Book Thursday, he said. Sarah sent the request. The fire inspector arrived at 8 the following morning. He walked the public areas, tested the exit doors, examined the service panel, and stood beneath 2 damaged ceiling sections without saying anything. Benjamin followed with a notebook. Sarah answered the machine questions and stayed silent on everything outside her work. At the front counter, the inspector drew a rough boundary on the floor plan. You can apply for a limited occupancy on this side, he said. 5 lanes, front restrooms, main entrance, and north rear exit. No kitchen service. No access behind this line, except employees. How soon? Benjamin asked. When the emergency lighting passes, the alarms are serviced, the damaged wiring is corrected, and I see a written capacity plan. That's possible in 3 weeks, if your contractors say it is. Sarah didn't correct the word contractors. The inspector tapped the drawing. The remaining lanes can stay closed during the first approval, but if customers cross the barrier, approval ends. You understand? Yes. Lane 12 stays inaccessible with the rest. Benjamin looked at the penciled boundary. The limited opening would give him income and proof that the alley could operate. It would also leave Bradley's warning on the closed side, where he couldn't investigate freely once customers entered. Can employees work back there when we're closed? He asked. Yes. Follow the electrical restrictions. The inspector signed the preliminary worksheet and gave Benjamin a copy. It was not permission to open. It was a path toward permission, with dates and conditions written beside it. After he left, Benjamin taped the floor plan to the rental counter. Sarah read the deadline for the alarm service. You need to call today. I already left a message. Insurance, quote, should come tomorrow. You're spending quickly. I noticed. The front door opened before either of them reached it. Melissa stepped inside, followed by a tall man in a pressed jacket. He carried a tablet and looked around as though the building had already become a set of dimensions. I told you nobody was walking through, Benjamin said. Melissa stopped near the counter. This is Evan. He only wants 5 minutes. The man offered his hand. I'm with Ridgeway Storage Development. Benjamin did not take it. You need to leave. Evan lowered his hand. His eyes moved to the lit emergency fixtures, the floor plan, and the extension cord running toward the stairs. We're prepared to make a clean offer, he said. No repair contingency. I didn't agree to a meeting. Melissa believed you'd want to hear the number. Melissa stepped closer. $98,000. You can pay everything due and walk away with something. Sarah came out from behind the lanes, wiping her hands on a rag. Evan glanced at her, then toward the machinery. We'd need access for a full site review. No, Benjamin said. Melissa's patience thinned. You requested an inspection. That means you're spending money before you know whether this works. I know 5 lanes can work. 5 lanes won't save the building. They're enough to open. Her eyes moved to the county paper. She hadn't expected an actual plan. Benjamin saw the moment the alley stopped being a burden that would quickly return to her control. Evan placed a business card on the counter. The offer is good for 10 days. Benjamin picked up the card and handed it back. The answer is no. You may reconsider after you see your contractor bids. If I do, I'll contact you. Evan looked at Melissa. She had promised him access, perhaps even cooperation. Benjamin's refusal embarrassed her, but not enough to make her leave quietly. Kristen is worried you'll claim we misled you, she said. I asked for the appraisal messages. That isn't a claim. She wants something in writing. What? That you understood the building's condition when you accepted it. Benjamin looked at the plywood partition behind lane 12, hidden beyond the dark end of the building. Bradley had left measurements nobody understood. The developer had valued only what he planned to remove. Now the county had given Benjamin a path to reopen, and his family wanted him to confirm he'd known enough before taking it. I won't sign anything else, he said. Melissa looked toward the lanes. Then we need to understand why you suddenly think this place is worth keeping. I don't know what it's worth, Benjamin said. I know what I'm doing next. Melissa looked at the floor plan again. And what is that? Getting 5 lanes approved. You're avoiding the question. No. You asked why I'm keeping it. That's my answer. Evan shifted his tablet under one arm. He no longer looked bored. The county paper had given the building something his appraisal had not. A possible use that didn't require knocking it down. If your plans change, the offer remains open, he said. They won't change in 10 days. You'd be surprised what contractor estimates can do. Benjamin opened the front door. Evan left first. Melissa stayed long enough to look toward lane 12. From the entrance, she could see only rows of dark machines and the canvas cover at the far end. What are you working on back there? She asked. Pin setters. All of them? The ones we can repair. Sarah had stopped wiping her hands. Benjamin could feel her watching him. Melissa nodded as if his answer had confirmed something. Then she followed Evan outside. When the door closed, Sarah said, She noticed. She noticed you. She noticed that you didn't tell her everything. I don't have anything to tell. You have Bradley's log. That log contains measurements we don't understand. And your sister now knows there's something you're not explaining. Benjamin watched Melissa speak to Evan beside her car. Evan pointed toward the loading wall, then made a motion across the back of the property with one hand. They were discussing the building as a shape. Whatever Bradley had protected behind lane 12, Evan saw only wall space he would remove. "Lock the rear doors when we leave," Benjamin said. "I already do. Change the padlock on the loading gate too." Sarah gave him a level look. "That sounds like concern." "It's access control." "Of course." They spent the afternoon preparing to restore water to the front restrooms. The shut-off valve was in a floor box behind the snack counter, buried beneath a rubber mat and 2 cases of empty syrup bottles. Benjamin removed the bottles. Sarah crouched over the valve with a wrench. "You need water before the fire inspection," he said. "You need someone watching every exposed pipe before we open this. There are pipes in the walls, then we listen." Benjamin went upstairs and opened the kitchen and bathroom taps. Sarah stayed at the main valve. They called each other on their phones so she could turn the water slowly while he watched. Air coughed from the kitchen faucet. Brown water followed, then cleared. "Kitchen has pressure," Benjamin said. "Check underneath." He opened the cabinet. The drain was dry. The supply lines held. The bathroom faucet shook, spat rust, and began running. A moment later, something struck the wall behind the toilet with a sharp knock. "Stop," Benjamin said. The water stopped. He listened. A hiss came from inside the wall. "Sarah, shut it off." "I am." The hiss continued. Benjamin ran downstairs. Water spread across the ceiling above lane 9, found a seam, and dropped onto the approach in a steady line. Sarah grabbed 2 buckets. Benjamin moved the nearest chairs and covered the ball return with plastic. By the time the pipe emptied, a dark stain had crossed 3 ceiling tiles. They stood beneath it, both breathing hard. "That pipe froze after the building closed," Sarah said. "Can we isolate upstairs?" "Maybe. We need to trace the branch. The restrooms are on the same line?" "Probably." "You keep saying probably. It's an old building. It doesn't care what I know." They removed the damaged ceiling tiles after checking the wiring above them. The split pipe ran toward the apartment and crossed over the public restroom wall. Bradley had marked both branches with strips of colored tape. Red led upstairs. Blue led to the front fixtures. Sarah followed the blue branch to a separate valve hidden above the janitor closet. "He planned for this," she said. "Then why wasn't it on the panel?" "He marked pipes. He didn't write instructions for whoever came after." Benjamin shut the red branch and opened the main valve again. This time, the restroom sinks filled without water, appearing over lane 9. He flushed each toilet twice. Both worked. The micro payoff was small enough to hear. Water moved through the tanks, stopped at the proper level, and stayed there. "Public restrooms," Benjamin said. "Upstairs still has no water. I can use the ones down here." "You live upstairs. I know where the stairs go." The broken pipe would need repair before winter, and the ceiling damage added another item. But the front fixtures could pass. Benjamin marked them ready for inspection. Sarah pointed at his wet shoes. "You're going to need more than 1 pair. I own boots. They're tied to your duffel bag." "Not anymore." That evening, they cleaned rental shoes at the front counter. Sarah sprayed disinfectant while Benjamin checked soles and laces. Of the first 100 pairs, 43 were usable. 20 needed laces. The rest went into discard boxes. Sarah took a photograph of the clean rows. "Don't post that," Benjamin said. "I wasn't going to." "You were holding your phone like you were." "I'm sending it to 2 league captains. That's posting with extra steps. They need to know we're serious. We don't have approval. I'm not taking reservations. I'm asking how many people would return if we opened 5 lanes." Benjamin tied a fresh lace through a brown shoe. "What if they all say no?" "Then you learn before buying more disinfectant." She sent the photograph. The first reply came before they finished the next row. Sarah read it and smiled. 12 people on Thursday nights. That's one message. The second captain replied several minutes later. He wanted Saturday afternoons and asked whether the old ball drill was still in the repair room. Benjamin looked toward the locked workshop beside the office. He hadn't opened it yet because the key ring hadn't fit. "What ball drill?" he asked. Sarah stood. "You haven't seen the pro shop? There's a pro shop." Bradley called it a repair room because he never sold enough shirts. The door had no visible keyhole, only a round steel plate beneath the handle. Sarah pressed the plate and slid it sideways. A small lock appeared behind it. The narrow brass key from Bradley's ring fit. Inside, dust covered a drill press, a ball spinner, hand tools, and shelves of plugs, grips, and cleaning compound. A small workbench ran beneath a window. Sarah switched on the drill's task light. It came on at once. "This is how I paid rent after the alley closed," she said. "You worked here after it closed?" "I picked up equipment by appointment. Bradley let me use the shop." "Until when?" "Until he died." Kristen changed the exterior locks a week after the funeral. Benjamin heard the part she didn't say. His inheritance had shut her out before it had given him a key. "You could have told me. I did tell you I had work at stake. You said repair work would return if we opened. I also have customer equipment stored at my place because I lost this bench. Why didn't you ask for access? Who would I ask?" Kristen didn't answer. Melissa said the contents belonged to the estate. "You didn't call me. I didn't know." Sarah ran one hand across the dusty work surface. "That sentence is doing a lot of work around here." Benjamin looked at the shelves. Bradley had left Sarah a working space without arranging her right to use it after he was gone. It was another problem created by silence, and Benjamin had helped continue it by staying away from the alley while the estate was divided. "What did you pay, Dad?" he asked. 20% of repair charges. He covered electricity and supplies we shared. We'll use the same arrangement until we write something better." Sarah looked at him. "You need all the income you can get. I also need a mechanic. You already owe me money. Then earn enough here that I'm not your only customer." She considered it, then held out her hand. "Until we write something better," she said. Benjamin shook it. By the next morning, Sarah had scheduled 4 ball repairs. The work wouldn't save the building, but it restored one service before the lanes opened. Customers could leave equipment through the front by appointment. It also meant people started talking. A former league bowler arrived before lunch with 2 bowling balls and a double bag. He stood at the entrance looking around the cleaned lobby. Bradley would have liked seeing lights on, he said. Benjamin accepted the bag and wrote the customer's phone number on a repair slip. "Sarah will call when they're ready." The man looked down the lanes. "You going to bring back the winter tournament? If we get approved, keep lane 12 out of it. That one always felt quick." Benjamin looked at him. "Quick how?" The man shrugged. "Probably the oil. Your dad used to give me trouble for blaming the lane. Did he say anything else?" "He said my feet were slower than the wood." Sarah appeared at the repair room door. They were. The man laughed and followed her inside. Benjamin remained at the counter. The comment might mean nothing. Bowlers blamed lanes for hooks, misses, and bad nights. Bradley had measured lane 12 repeatedly, though, and now someone remembered it, feeling different. Benjamin wrote quick beside the lane, 12 entries in his notebook. That afternoon, the alarm company serviced the control panel. 2 smoke detectors needed replacement. The main horn worked. Benjamin paid another bill and scheduled the follow-up test for the next week. Before closing, he and Sarah installed a rope barrier across lanes 6 through 12 according to the county plan. The restricted side went dark. 5 cleaned approaches remained under the working lights. From the front doors, split rail no longer looked abandoned. It looked incomplete. Kristen arrived just after 5. She stood outside until Benjamin let her in. She wore a light coat and held a white envelope. "I came alone," she said. "I can see that. I don't want an argument." "What's in the envelope?" "Acknowledgement of the property condition. I already told Melissa I'm not signing it. You haven't read it. I signed the transfer." "Why do you need another paper?" Kristen held the envelope against her chest. "Because you're asking questions about the appraisal. Melissa thinks you're preparing to say we deceived you." "Did you?" "No." "Then give me Dad's estate records and stop asking me to protect you from questions." Her eyes moved over the working lights, clean shoe racks, and service counter. "You've spent money." "Yes." "How much?" "That's my business. Bradley used to say that too." Benjamin waited. Kristen walked to the rope barrier. She looked toward lane 12, though it was hard to distinguish in the darkness. "Evan wanted to inspect the back wall while Bradley was alive," she said. Bradley refused. "When?" "The same week as the exterior appraisal." "Why?" "He said the back couldn't be changed." "Those exact words?" Kristen frowned, trying to remember. He said, "Nothing behind 12 moves." I thought he was being difficult because he didn't want to sell. Benjamin felt Sarah come to a stop behind him. "Did he explain?" he asked. "No, he wouldn't discuss it." "Who heard him?" "Melissa was outside with the appraiser. I was there." "You never wondered why?" "I wondered about many things with your father. I got tired of asking." She put the envelope on the counter. Benjamin didn't touch it. "I won't sign," he said. "And nobody enters this building without my permission. Not you, Melissa, or Evan." Kristen looked at him, then at Sarah. "You sound like Bradley." "No, Dad left people guessing. I'm telling you clearly." Kristen left the envelope and walked out. Benjamin locked the door behind her. When he returned to the counter, Sarah had opened the maintenance log to the repeated measurements. She placed Kristen's exact remembered words beside Bradley's written warning. For the first time, the note had a second source. It still had no explanation. Benjamin looked past the rope toward the dark final lane. "We get the 5 lanes approved," he said. "Then we find out why nobody was allowed to change the back of 12." Sarah shut the log and carried it to the office safe. The safe was built into the bottom cabinet beneath Bradley's desk. Its combination had been taped inside the maintenance room clipboard, written as 3 machine numbers. Benjamin would never have recognized them as a combination. Sarah did. "You knew about this?" he asked. I knew Bradley used those numbers when he wanted to remember something." The safe opened with a stiff turn. It contained insurance papers, employee tax forms, old league contracts, and a cloth bank bag holding $42 and change. There was no explanation for lane 12. Benjamin placed the log inside. "Kristen knows we're interested in the back wall," Sarah said. "She doesn't know why. Neither do we. That's why it stays locked." The electrical contractor arrived the following morning with the fire inspection report in hand. He removed the panel cover, tested the circuits, and traced the damaged wiring above the restricted lanes. Benjamin expected 2 replaced lines and a few outlets. Instead, the contractor pointed to heat damage behind the main breaker. "This connection has been running hot," he said. "Not yesterday, for years." "Can you replace the breaker?" Benjamin asked. "The bus behind it is damaged. I can isolate the public area and keep your 5-lane load safe, but the panel needs replacement before you bring the rest back." "How much for the public area?" $3,800, including the emergency circuits. "And the whole panel?" $6,300 if the feeder tests clean." Sarah stood beside lane 5 with her arms folded. She knew enough not to interrupt while Benjamin heard the price. "If it doesn't test clean," he asked, "I'll stop and call you." "When can you do it?" "Monday. That's 4 days. You asked for soon." Benjamin looked toward the office. His bank balance had already dropped with the boiler, alarm work, batteries, insurance deposit, and parts. He could pay for the full panel. After that, he would have almost nothing left for the roof, taxes, or the apartment pipe. "Do the whole panel," he said. The contractor wrote the deposit amount on his work order. Sarah waited until he left. "You could have done the public side. And pay twice when we open the rest? We don't know if you can open the rest. That's why we're trying." "No, that's why we keep enough cash to survive an answer we don't like." Benjamin signed the work order. 5 lanes aren't the goal anymore. Since when? Since Dad measured 1 wall for years and refused to let anyone touch it. That doesn't make the building solvent. It means I'm not paying to close half of it forever. Sarah picked up the repair list. "Then you need income. We're opening Friday. We don't have final approval. The alarm retest is Monday. Electrical is Tuesday morning. Dana said the occupancy check can happen Wednesday. And if one of those fails, we fix it. With the $42 in Bradley's safe, with whatever I have." Sarah stared at him. Benjamin knew what she saw. Bradley had made the same kind of choices, spending on machinery before explaining the risk to anyone who depended on him. Benjamin wanted to believe his decision was different because he had said it aloud. It wasn't different enough. "What do you need from me?" he asked. "A written shop agreement. I said we'd write one. You said after we opened. I'll do it today. I also need my parts money separated from alley money. If a customer pays me for a repair, it doesn't cover your light bill. Agreed. And if you run out of cash, you don't delay what you owe me without telling me. Agreed." Sarah's posture eased slightly. She had an independent reason to want the doors open, but that reason also made Benjamin responsible for more than his own hopes. If he invited her business back, then failed without warning, she would lose customers twice because of the same building. They wrote the agreement at Bradley's desk. Benjamin gave Sarah use of the repair room, the shared tools already inside, and customer access by appointment. She would pay 20% of collected labor charges, not parts. Either of them could end the arrangement with notice. Sarah added a sentence requiring both of them to maintain insurance for their own work. Benjamin signed first. Sarah read the page once more before signing. "Bradley hated paperwork," she said. "I'm beginning to understand the price of that. The electrical work took a day and a half. The contractor found the feeder intact, replaced the panel, and marked every circuit. When he turned on the full service, ceiling lights came alive above 9 lanes. 3 remained dark because of damaged fixtures, but the building no longer depended on one safe strip of power. The payment cleared that afternoon. Benjamin checked his bank account twice. $2,136 remained. He sat at the manager's desk with the figure on his phone. The warehouse offer would have cleared the county amount and left him with more than that. He could still call Evan before the 10 days ended. Instead, Benjamin opened the estate appraisal and read it again. The report gave no operating value to the lanes, repair shop, or equipment. It also gave no special value to the rear of the parcel. The land was priced as one flat industrial site. If Bradley's warning mattered, the appraisal had missed it. That was still only a possibility. Benjamin couldn't pay taxes with a possibility. On Wednesday, the inspector tested the alarms, emergency lights, exits, restrooms, and 5 repaired pin setters. He watched Sarah send a ball down lane 3. The machine swept the pins and returned the ball without stopping. At the rope barrier, he checked the restricted signs. "You'll need an employee watching the floor whenever customers are present," he said. "I'll be here," Benjamin replied. "Capacity is 40 people. No kitchen, no alcohol. Restricted side remains closed." He signed the limited occupancy approval and handed it over. Benjamin read the signature before allowing himself to breathe. "Friday through Sunday only for now," the inspector said. "You keep up the work and we'll expand after the next inspection. We will." When the inspector left, Sarah took a roll of clear tape from the counter and fixed the approval inside the front window. The building had permission to do something again. By Thursday, every available lane had been reserved for the first 2 hours on Friday evening. Sarah's former league contacts brought their own groups. Benjamin cleaned tables, numbered the rental shoes, and printed simple price sheets at the public library. He bought bottled drinks and packaged snacks with cash he had begun carrying in an envelope so he could see it disappear. He slept little. The upstairs pipe was still shut off, so he showered in the downstairs employee washroom before opening. He shaved over a sink beneath fluorescent light, using a small mirror from one of his boxes. At 5 on Friday, Sarah unlocked the repair room. Benjamin turned on the lane lights. The first customers arrived 11 minutes early. They were adults who had bowled at split rail before it closed. Some paused inside the entrance and took in the rope barrier, exposed ceiling repairs, and mismatched lights. Then one man placed his old shoes on the counter and asked for lane 4. By 6, all 5 lanes were running. Balls struck pins, return motors hummed. The front doors opened and closed often enough to move the stale air out of the lobby. Sarah walked between the machines and the repair room, tightening a belt on lane 5, then drilling a thumb hole for a customer. Benjamin stayed at the counter, took payments, rented shoes, cleared stuck balls, and watched the restricted line. He knew where every customer stood. He knew which lane had the weak return. When the toilet in the women's restroom kept running, he fixed the float before the tank overflowed. People noticed. They asked when the other lanes would open. They asked whether the winter tournament would return. They asked if Bradley's old coffee was still as bad as they remembered. Benjamin didn't promise more than he had. "We're working on it," he said. At 7:30, Melissa came through the front doors. She wore her business clothes and carried no bowling bag. The noise made her stop. She had likely expected a few curious visitors and a machine failing in public. Instead, 5 lanes were full, and 3 groups waited near the tables. Benjamin handed a pair of shoes across the counter, took a payment, and gave the customer a lane slip before speaking to her. "What do you need?" "I saw the cars. We're at capacity. I'm not here to bowl. Then don't cross the barrier." Melissa looked toward the signed approval in the window. "You got permission. For 5 lanes. How much did this cost?" "More than tonight will earn." "Then you understand?" Benjamin understood more than she realized. Every sound in the building proved the appraisal incomplete. Every payment also proved how slowly an alley earned money. Melissa lowered her voice. "Evan can increase the offer to $105,000 if you allow inspection by Monday. No. You have less than 7 weeks before the county amount is due. I know the date. This crowd won't cover it. I know." "Then what are you proving?" That question stayed with him because she wasn't wrong. Benjamin had believed reopening would change the argument. If customers returned and machines worked, Melissa would have to admit the alley wasn't worthless. Kristen might admit Bradley had given him more than a burden. The family might finally treat his judgment as something real. But the crowded room didn't change their role for him. Melissa saw only a more expensive mistake. Kristen had asked him to sign away blame. Their approval wasn't waiting at the end of the repairs. Benjamin looked at Sarah. She was kneeling beside lane 3, showing a customer why his ball return had stopped. The repair room light glowed behind her. People had come because she contacted them, and they trusted the machines because she was there. The building had work to do, whether his family respected it or not. "I'm not proving anything to you," he said. Melissa's face tightened. "Then tell me what you're doing. I'm keeping this open while I find out what Dad protected." Her eyes went to the restricted lanes. "What are you talking about?" "Nothing you need to handle. You can't say something like that and expect me to leave. I can when you're standing in my business during operating hours." For a moment, neither moved. Then a ball return stopped on lane 5. "Ben," Sarah called. He stepped away from Melissa and went to the machine. The problem was a loose belt guide. Benjamin shut off the return, reset the guide, and started it again. The waiting ball rose into the rack. The bowler thanked him and picked it up. When Benjamin returned to the counter, Melissa was gone. They closed at 10. Sarah locked the repair room while Benjamin counted the register. After drinks, snacks, shoe rentals, and lane fees, the evening had brought in $478. It was the most the building had earned in years. It wasn't enough to cover a tenth of the electrical work. Sarah sat across from him at the counter. "At full use, all 12 lanes change the weekly number," she said. "They still don't produce 74,000 before the deadline." "I know. What does that mean?" Benjamin put the cash into separate envelopes for sales tax, supplies, Sarah's share, and operating money. Very little remained after he divided it properly. "It means opening isn't the victory," he said. "It only gives us time and a reason to keep working." "Toward what?" He looked through the dark gap beyond the rope. Lane 12 waited at the far wall, covered and silent. "Before I sell, surrender, or lose this place, I'm going to learn why Dad made that line untouchable. Then I'll decide what saving split rail actually requires." Sarah nodded toward the cash envelopes. "Then we need 3 lists." Benjamin found a clean sheet of paper. "One for what earns," she said. "One for what keeps the county satisfied. One for what Bradley left unexplained." The first list included lane rentals, shoe rentals, packaged food, and repair room work. The second included the remaining wiring, ceiling repairs, roof drainage, and expanded occupancy. The third had only 4 entries: lane 12 measurements, fixed rear line, covered pin setter, plywood partition. Benjamin taped the first 2 lists inside the office. He locked the third in the safe with Bradley's log. The next morning, he called everyone who had left a number at the counter and offered reserved lane times for the following 2 weekends. He didn't ask Melissa for a loan, Kristen for more records, or Evan for another number. He called the roof contractor whose estimate he had avoided opening and asked whether the leaking sections could be repaired separately. The contractor agreed to patch the kitchen and west storage areas for less than a full replacement. It would still take most of the following weekend's expected income. Benjamin booked it. Then he called the county and requested the requirements for expanding beyond 5 lanes. Dana sent him a new inspection sheet. Lanes 6 through 11 could be added after their electrical circuits, approaches, and machines passed. Lane 12 could be added too, but Benjamin left it off the request. Sarah read the form over his shoulder. "You're separating 12, until we know what the wall means." "Good. You thought I'd put it on?" "I thought you'd be tempted by the number. I'm tempted by every number." They closed to customers on Monday and moved the rope barrier 1 lane at a time as they worked. Lane 6 needed a cable Sarah had already found in Bradley's stock. Lane 7's sweep arm was bent at the joint. Benjamin removed it, heated the replacement bracket according to Sarah's instructions, and pressed it flat in the repair room vise. "You've done that before," she said, "at Martin Equipment. For Melissa?" "For Dad, before Melissa ran it." Sarah checked the bracket against a straight edge. "She kept you out of the business. She said I wasn't ready to supervise people." "Were you?" "No." The answer surprised them both. Benjamin wiped metal dust from the bench. "I also never asked what I needed to learn. I waited for Dad to tell me I belonged there." "Did he?" "He told me to help wherever things were backed up." "That isn't the same, no." The bracket fit. Lane 7 completed 6 cycles without sticking. Benjamin wrote the repair date in a new log beneath Bradley's last entry. He used the same plain description Bradley would have used, then added his initials. It was the first time his handwriting appeared in the building's maintenance history. Lane 8 had a worn lift belt. Lane 9 needed the ceiling tiles replaced after the pipe leak. Lane 10 still dropped the right corner pin, exactly as Sarah remembered. She adjusted the spotting cup while Benjamin watched from the pit. "Hand me the short wrench," she said. He passed it through the frame. "No, the other short wrench. You called both of them short. One is obviously shorter, only if they're together. You should put that on the wall for customers." Sarah adjusted the cup, signaled him to start the machine, and watched 10 pins settle evenly on the deck. "Bradley fought that for months," Benjamin said. "He kept replacing the spring. The spring wasn't the problem. Did you tell him?" "Many times. Did he listen?" "Eventually, he called it his idea." Benjamin laughed. The sound traveled through the open machinery and came back from the block wall. Sarah smiled without looking at him. By Thursday, lanes 6 through 10 cycled. Lane 11 required a distributor bearing they didn't have. A new one cost more than Benjamin wanted to spend. Sarah called another alley she serviced and traded 2 unused split-rail masking unit motors for the bearing and several belts. "You can trade Dad's parts?" Benjamin asked. "You own them. I'm asking whether it's a good trade. It is if you want lane 11. Those motors don't fit any machine here. Then do it." The bearing arrived Friday morning. Sarah installed it while Benjamin repaired loose trim along the approach. By late afternoon, the machine placed a full rack and returned a test ball. 11 lanes were mechanically usable. Only 5 could take customers, but the dark row no longer held dead equipment. When Benjamin turned on lanes 6 through 11, the pin deck lights formed a continuous line across most of the building. Sarah stood at the control desk. "Take a picture. You told me pictures create expectations." That was before we met one. Benjamin took the photograph. He posted it to the alley's old social page with a short message saying 6 more lanes were running and awaiting inspection. Within an hour, former customers shared it across town. The following weekend's reservations filled before he went to bed. The increased business created its own problems. 40 people at once meant every chair was used. The bottled drinks ran out on Saturday evening. One ball return overheated because a customer placed a coat over its vent. Benjamin spent 20 minutes explaining that the rope barrier was not a place to lean while watching closed lanes. Still, the register improved. Sarah's repair room stayed busy. Her customers brought balls for resurfacing, grip changes, and cleaning. Some waited to watch her work, which kept them in the building long enough to buy another game when a lane opened. On Sunday night, Benjamin counted $1,312 in gross receipts. He separated every share, paid Sarah what the agreement required, and set aside the roof payment. His own envelope remained thin. Sarah brought 2 paper plates upstairs after closing. She had heated frozen dinners in the repair room microwave because the apartment kitchen still had no water. "You could pay yourself something," she said. "After the roof. You need gas. I have enough. You said that when the tank was half full. It's above a quarter." She sat on the couch. "Pay yourself for the hours at the counter. If I take it, the building has less. If you don't take it, the building has an owner who can't drive to buy toilet paper." Benjamin opened the operating envelope and removed $80. He wrote "owner draw" on the outside. The words felt embarrassing. Sarah didn't react. On Monday, the roof contractor completed the patches. Rain came that night. Benjamin and Sarah stood beneath the former leak points with flashlights. The kitchen ceiling stayed dry. So did West storage. A separate drip appeared near the loading door. Sarah placed a bucket under it. "We'll take the win we paid for," she said. The inspector returned Tuesday. He tested the 6 additional machines, checked the new ceiling tiles, and examined the expanded electrical work. Lane 10 dropped its full rack. Lane 11 returned the ball cleanly. He moved the rope boundary to the edge of lane 12. 11 lanes approved under the same capacity until you add seating and exit lighting, he said. 12 remains closed. Benjamin looked at the final lane, now isolated by itself. "That's what we requested." The inspector signed the expanded approval. That evening, every working lane was occupied. People who had waited near the front during this first weekend now spread through the full concourse. The room sounded like the split rail Benjamin remembered. Not exactly the same, but active enough that silence no longer defined it. A customer at lane 10 called for help. Benjamin cleared a pin from the return track without shutting down the neighboring machine. Sarah watched from the repair room doorway and gave him a small nod. His deliberate plan had worked once. He had taken 6 closed lanes, made them usable, and obtained permission to earn from them. After closing, they moved the rope to surround lane 12 alone. The approach was clean now. Sarah removed the canvas cover and inspected the pin setter without starting it. The pit wood Benjamin had found earlier had come from a brace beside the plywood partition. The brace had been shortened to make room for the machine frame. Sarah pointed to clean bolts at the base. Bradley moved this pin setter at some point, she said. Forward or back? I can't tell without comparing mounts. They checked lane 11. Its frame sat against a line of older bolt holes, evidence of routine replacement over many years. Lane 12 had more holes, some filled, some hidden beneath the frame. Could repairs explain it? Benjamin asked. Maybe. Could the wall? Maybe. You have more maybes than when we started. We've found more questions. Benjamin opened Bradley's log on the workbench and compared the repeated figures. He could not match them to any marks visible behind the machine. The fixed rear line appeared to fall inside the closed plywood chase. We need to open the partition, he said. We need the electrical contractor to clear the wiring first. Call him. He'll charge. Call him. The contractor returned Thursday and disconnected an abandoned exhaust circuit inside the chase. He confirmed the remaining wiring ran safely overhead. Benjamin removed the first painted screw, then another. Behind the plywood was a narrow cavity, barely wide enough for a person to enter sideways. Dust covered the floor. The outer cinder block wall ran along one side. The pin setter partition formed the other. Near the floor, Bradley had driven a row of brass screws into the concrete along a straight chalk mark. The line continued behind the machine. Sarah aimed her light into the cavity. There's your rear line, she said. Benjamin stepped inside. At the far end, a square metal access plate had been fitted into the cinder block. It was painted brown and secured with 4 screws. No wiring entered it, no duct connected to it. He touched the plate. Ordinary service cover? He asked. Not for a pin setter. Benjamin removed the screws. The plate came free, revealing a shallow recess in the block. Inside lay a capped metal tube wrapped in oilcloth. He carried it to the workbench. The cap was threaded and sealed with dried grease. Sarah held the tube while Benjamin worked it loose with padded pliers. A small brass key slid into his palm, attached to a flat tag stamped with 2 words. Parcel file. Nothing else was inside. Sarah looked toward Bradley's locked office cabinets. We haven't found a lock for that. We haven't looked for one. Benjamin photographed the key and tag, then locked them in the safe with the maintenance log. He did not post that picture. The next morning, Melissa sent him the photograph he had posted of the 11 lit lanes. Her message contained 1 sentence. Kristen says you opened the wall Dad told us not to touch. What did you find? Benjamin read it twice. The practical success had shown Melissa exactly where to look. Someone who had been inside during operating hours had seen the rope around lane 12, or Kristen had connected the repairs to Bradley's warning. Benjamin didn't answer the question. He wrote back, all property access and estate communication must now be arranged in writing. Then he changed the office lock and scheduled the first full reopening tournament for the final Saturday before the county deadline. By noon, the tournament reservations were full. Benjamin had limited the field to adult bowlers and required payment in advance because he needed money for lane oil, pins, and the final inspection. Several former league teams returned. Others entered as pairs and agreed to be matched at the counter. Sarah printed the lane schedule. You included 12, she said. Last lane, first round. It isn't approved. It will be if we repair it. We haven't run it. We'll inspect every part first. That warning is still in the safe. I'm not moving the rear line. Sarah held the schedule against the window light. And if the machine doesn't pass, we put the final team on another lane and run late. You're planning around failure. I'm giving it somewhere to go. She placed the schedule on the counter. That's better than pretending it can't happen. They began preparing lane 12 without altering the plywood chase. Sarah cleaned the pin setter and replaced the belt Bradley had tagged. Benjamin vacuumed the pit, checked the ball return, and removed years of dust from the lane surface. They did not start the machine. Sarah wanted the contractor present for the first powered cycle because of the abandoned wiring inside the chase. Benjamin left the brass key locked in the safe. He had tried it in every cabinet and desk lock inside the building. It fit none of them. At 3, an overnight envelope arrived from a law office in Casper. Benjamin signed for it at the front doors and opened it in the office with Sarah present. The letter was written on behalf of Kristen and Melissa. It said, questions had arisen about property that may not have been identified during the estate division. It demanded an inventory of anything discovered inside the altered wall, access for an independent inspection, and written assurance that Benjamin would make no further structural changes. If he refused, Kristen would consider asking the probate court to review the transfer and the division surrounding it. Sarah read the last page twice. "They know about the key," she said. "They know we opened the wall." "Did you tell anyone what was inside?" "No. I didn't either." Benjamin looked through the office window. During the busy weekend, customers had taken photographs of the repaired lanes. Someone might have seen the open panel. Someone might have heard a tool, asked a question, then repeated half an answer. It didn't matter now. "What are you going to do?" Sarah asked. "Call Kristen. That's what they expect." She signed the letter, the attorney signed it, she authorized it. Benjamin called anyway. Kristen answered after the 4th ring. "You received it," she said. "You could have called first." "I did call." "You stopped answering. You asked me to sign another paper. That isn't the same conversation. What did you find in the wall?" "A key." "To what?" "I don't know." She was silent for a moment. "Melissa says there may be documents." Melissa is guessing. "Then let us inspect." "No." "Why not, if there's nothing?" "Because the building is mine. You don't get access because you become curious after I repair it." Kristen's voice sharpened. "That building came from Bradley's estate. So did the business and the house. They were properly valued. So was the alley, according to you. You accepted it." "Yes." "And now you suggest we hid something." "I've said the appraisal didn't measure an operating business. I haven't said you hid anything." "Melissa says you're building a case." Benjamin looked at the estate appraisal on his desk. He had spent weeks waiting for them to explain themselves. Now they were frightened by questions he hadn't fully formed. "I'm building an alley," he said. "That's clever, but it doesn't answer me. The key has a tag-marked parcel file. That's all I know." Sarah turned toward him. She hadn't expected him to disclose it. Kristen took a breath. "Then it belongs with the estate records. It was inside a wall on property devised to me. You don't know what it opens, neither do you. We can let the attorney decide." "No. A title company can determine whether a parcel record affects this property. A surveyor can determine whether Bradley's line matches anything outside. I'll use people who don't benefit from either answer." Kristen's tone changed. The anger remained, but fear came through it. "If you do that, you may force us to reopen everything. I'm not forcing you. You think Melissa received too much? I think Melissa decided what my property meant before I saw it. You signed because you wanted the alley. That's true." The admission left Kristen without the denial she expected. Benjamin continued. "I wanted something Dad chose for me. I wanted to believe that meant I still had a place with all of you. I signed too quickly. That part is mine." Sarah lowered her eyes to the desk. Kristen said, "Then why punish the rest of us for your decision?" "I'm not. I'm verifying what I own. And if it's valuable, then I'll decide what the property needs." "You mean what you need. The letter can demand access. It can't make me give it." Kristen ended the call without saying goodbye. Benjamin placed the phone down. Sarah remained quiet. "What?" he asked. "You gave her the tag. She would learn eventually. You also gave her time to act. If the key matters, hiding it makes their worst claim easier. That's the honest answer. You sound like there's a dishonest one you prefer." "I prefer answers that don't cost me my workbench." Benjamin looked at her. Sarah pointed to the attorney's letter. "If they challenge ownership and customers think this place will close again, my repairs leave with them. I agreed to build here because you said you were keeping it. I am. You have $2,000, a tax deadline, and relatives threatening court. Wanting to keep it isn't the same as being able to." He had no answer that would protect her. Sarah picked up the tournament schedule. 3 groups called this morning. Melissa told one of the league captains that the tournament may not be authorized because ownership is under review. There is no review. People hear probate and stop listening. Did they cancel? 2 groups did. The 3rd wants reassurance by tomorrow. Benjamin opened the registration file. The canceled groups occupied 4 lane slots and had paid $640. Refunds would come from money already divided for tournament supplies. A prior advantage disappeared in less than 10 minutes. The reservations had helped him believe the tournament could pay for the remaining work. Now the same public plan gave Melissa people to warn. "Refund them today," he said. "We could wait until the deadline in the registration terms." "No, send it today." "That leaves us short for inspection, I know." He made both refunds before calling anyone else. The title company that had handled Bradley's recorded device agreed to review the transfer documents. The employee Benjamin spoke with explained it plainly. The alley was recorded in his name. A threat to challenge probate did not change that. But if Kristen filed something, any new agreement tied to the land would require the issue to be addressed. "What new agreement?" Benjamin asked. "Sale, mortgage, lease, easement, long-term access. Anything someone wants insured. I'm not selling. Then first find out what your key opens." The county records office had several older parcel cabinets transferred from its previous building. One cabinet still used brass keys with stamped tags. Staff could search the storage index, but they needed the original parcel number. Benjamin found that number on the device. The records office called him back an hour later. A file matching the alley parcel existed in off-site storage. It could be brought to the county office the following week. Benjamin could inspect it, but any boundary claim would still require a licensed surveyor to compare the record with physical markers. Sarah listened from the counter while he wrote down the appointment. "That's after the contractor starts 12, she said. "Yes, and before the tournament. 2 days before. You could cancel the tournament and wait. Would you?" "I asked you." Benjamin looked at the lanes. Customers had begun arriving for the evening session. Lane 11's lights reflected off the cleaned boards. The rope around Lane 12 had become more noticeable now that everything around it worked. "If we cancel because Melissa used the word probate, she learns she can close this place without proving anything," he said. "That isn't the only risk." "I know." Sarah leaned closer. "If the key opens a parcel record and that record changes the value, your family will say you used tournament money to investigate something that belonged to all of them. The tournament money belongs to the business. Can you prove every dollar stayed separate?" Benjamin looked at the envelopes. He could now, because Sarah had forced him to separate them. A month earlier, he couldn't have. "Yes," he said. "Then keep doing it." The contractor returned the next morning. With the abandoned circuit disconnected and the service chase open, Sarah powered the Lane 12 pin setter. The motor turned. The machine lifted, swept, and placed 10 pins. No wire heated, no belt slipped. The return track ran empty beneath the approach. They completed 10 machine cycles without sending a ball. Sarah shut it down. Mechanically, it can pass. Benjamin called the inspector and booked the Lane 12 check for the day before the tournament. He also called a licensed surveyor and reserved the earliest available field appointment, the morning after they viewed the parcel file. The surveyor required a deposit. After the refunds, Benjamin did not have enough in his personal account and operating envelope without touching Sarah's parts money or the sales tax reserve. He showed Sarah the figures. "We can delay the roof balance," she said. "The contractor finished the work. Then delay my share." "No, it's my choice. It would become your risk." "It already is." Benjamin shook his head. "Your money stays yours." He sold the last thing of value that had come from his old room, a camera he had bought for a road trip he never took. The sale covered the survey deposit and left enough to pay the roof contractor on time. That evening, he emailed Melissa and Kristen. He gave them the date and location of the records appointment. He invited them to attend, along with the later field verification, provided all access remained supervised and no original record left county custody. Sarah read the message before he sent it. "You're showing them the whole plan. I'm showing them the process. They can use it to stop you. They can try. And if the survey proves the line creates an obligation instead of value," Benjamin looked at Lane 12. Bradley had protected that rear line for years, but protection did not promise profit. It might mean a repair restriction, another access duty, or land Benjamin could never use. "Then I accept the obligation with the property," he said. He sent the message and kept the tournament on the schedule. Melissa replied within an hour. "We will attend. Do not remove, copy, or alter anything before we arrive." Benjamin read the message to Sarah. "She writes like she owns the key," Sarah said. "She writes like I work for her. Do you want me at the records office?" "Yes." "Good. I was coming anyway." The following week, all 4 of them met in the county records room. Kristen wore the same careful expression she had used during the estate division. Melissa carried Bradley's leather document case. Sarah brought the maintenance log in a sealed plastic sleeve. Benjamin carried the brass key. A records employee set a gray metal file box on the table. A narrow lock was fitted beneath its handle. This was deposited with the old survey archive, she said. It's indexed to the split rail parcel, but it was never transferred into our standard cabinet. We don't force private locks if a recorded copy exists elsewhere. Melissa looked at Benjamin. You knew it would be here. I knew there was a matching file. You scheduled the appointment after the office found the index. The brass key turned. Inside lay a folded survey in a protective sleeve, a recording receipt dated from the year Bradley preserved the parcel, and several pages of field measurements. Bradley's name appeared on the cover. So did the address of Split Rail Lanes. Sarah placed the maintenance log beside it, without opening either. The records employee checked the receipt against the county index. This confirms the file is tied to the recorded survey. I can't tell you what the lines mean. A licensed surveyor does that. Can we copy it? Benjamin asked. We can scan the filed pages. The original stays here. Kristen leaned closer. Does this change ownership? No, the employee said. It's a survey record, not a transfer. Melissa seemed relieved until the employee added, It may describe what was transferred, though. That's why you need the surveyor and title company. Authority had confirmed only the rule. The file belonged to the parcel record. Its lines still had to match the ground, and the recorded devise still had to be read against them. Benjamin did not unfold the survey himself. He waited while the employee placed it beneath the overhead scanner. The image appeared on a monitor, one section at a time. The drawing showed the alley building, parking lot, Cottonwood Road, and a narrow section running behind the pinsetter wall toward the neighboring property. Handwritten dimensions crowded the rear corner. One matched the first figure Bradley had repeated in his maintenance log. Sarah saw it too. She pointed without touching the screen. That's his number. Melissa turned. What number? Sarah opened the log to the marked page. Bradley's measurement and the survey notation were the same. The connection was real. It still didn't explain what the narrow section represented. A label crossed the rear area, but part of it had faded on the original. The scan caught only the final word clearly. Access. Kristen read it aloud. Access to what? The records employee shook her head. That's beyond what I can interpret. Melissa took a photograph of the screen. Benjamin didn't stop her. He requested certified copies for everyone present. Hiding the page now would only make the coming fight about secrecy instead of land. Outside the county building, Melissa waited beside his truck. If that strip adds value, the estate division was wrong, she said. The parcel was devised to me before the appraisal divided anything else. The values were used to make the distribution fair. You and Kristen called them fair. Dad didn't intend for you to get something hidden from the rest of us. Benjamin looked at the leather document case under her arm. You don't know what he intended. Neither do you. That's why I'm verifying it. Melissa lowered her voice. We can avoid court. If the survey reveals additional value, agree now to divide it in the same proportions as the savings. You mean mostly to you and Kristen. I mean fairly. You already have the business. I run the business. I kept the employees. I handle suppliers, payroll, customers, and every problem Dad left behind. I know. You say that as if it cost me nothing. I didn't say that. Melissa had expected him to attack. When he didn't, some of her anger lost its direction. Benjamin continued. I'm not taking Martin equipment from you. I'm not asking for the house. I'm not giving you part of Split Rail because the part you dismissed may matter. Then we file. That's your choice. If Kristen challenges the division, your title could be tied up when the taxes come due. I understand. Do you? Yes. Melissa opened her car door. You could lose the alley while trying to prove you deserved it. Benjamin held her gaze. I'm done asking the family to decide what I deserve. She got into the car and closed the door. Kristen remained near the county entrance. She had heard enough to understand Melissa's offer had failed. Your father would hate this, she said. He would hate us looking at his survey. He would hate us standing outside a public building talking about court. He could have explained the file. He could have explained many things. Kristen looked older than she had at the front door with Benjamin's duffel bag. Not weaker, just tired of defending choices that had seemed settled. Melissa thinks you're going to tell everyone we cheated you, she said. I haven't. You posted the lanes. People know you're fighting us. People know I reopened. You could put the appraisal messages online and make us look terrible. Benjamin had considered it. The developer's early involvement, Kristen's authorization, and Melissa's use of his valuation would create exactly the kind of story people repeated, without waiting for details. Public pressure might make them withdraw the probate threat. It would also turn the alley's customers into a crowd aimed at his family. Every game in repair would feel like choosing a side. Sarah's business would be tied to an accusation she hadn't made. "I'm not posting them," he said. Kristen searched his face for a condition. "Why not?" "Because the appraisal is evidence, not advertising. That doesn't mean you forgive us." "No." She looked away first. The title company reviewed the certified file that afternoon. Its representative explained that Bradley's recorded devise transferred the complete legal parcel identified in the survey index. If the narrow area marked access lay inside that parcel, and the field pins still matched, it had passed with the bowling alley. "If," Benjamin repeated. "If," the representative said. "The recorded words are clear. The physical location is the remaining question." The surveyor moved the field appointment to Saturday morning because snow was expected the following week. That created a problem. The tournament began at 10, and the county surveyor needed clear access behind lane 12. "Can you work before we open?" Benjamin asked. "I can locate the known pins," the surveyor said. "If the interior measurement matters, I'll need the lane available too." Benjamin scheduled the surveyor for 7. The title representative agreed to attend at 8:30. Landon Perkins's name and cooperative office appeared on the survey distribution sheet, so Benjamin called him next. Landon answered on the second ring. "Bradley's boy?" he said. "I heard you put the lights back on." "Most of them." That was always the honest answer with that building. Benjamin told him about the survey without interpreting it. Landon went quiet when he heard the word access. "The co-op trucks use the lane behind split rail," he said. "They have for years. Who gave permission? Bradley never stopped us. When a contractor wanted to move the back of the alley, Bradley told him the truck way stayed open." "When was that?" "Long time ago. Around the warehouse discussions, I think." "Did Dad say the alley owned the route?" "No. I assume the co-op did, or the town. I've never seen the deed." "Can you come Saturday?" "I can come. Don't tell the co-op board this is worth anything yet. We don't know what it is." Landon understood the difference between a route people used and a right someone owned. "I'll come as Bradley's friend. If it affects the co-op, I'll speak for the co-op after I have facts." That was the answer Benjamin needed. Back at Split Rail, Sarah had Lane 12's machine ready for inspection. The county inspector watched it complete 12 cycles. He checked the return, emergency stop, approach, and open service chase. "The plate goes back before customers enter," he said. "The chase stays closed." Benjamin replaced the access plate and plywood panel while the inspector watched. The brass survey line remained untouched behind it. "Lane 12 approved," the inspector said. "Same occupancy conditions." Sarah waited until he left. "We should roll a ball before Saturday." Bradley's note was about the rear line, not the lane surface. That's an argument for testing. The surveyor needs the lane unchanged. Rolling a ball doesn't change it. Benjamin knew she was right. He also knew the first use would become part of whatever the surveyor examined. If something felt wrong, he wanted witnesses who had bowled there before, not just his own uncertain memory. "1 live frame," he said. "First round Saturday. Then we stop if anything feels wrong." Sarah didn't like using the tournament as a test. "Tell the bowler," she said. "No surprises, I will." Benjamin assigned himself to Lane 12's first team. He would throw the first ball and accept the result in front of everyone. He sent Melissa and Kristen the field appointment, title review time, and tournament schedule. He also sent copies to Sarah and Landon. No private deal would settle what the line meant. No public accusation would settle it either. The survey, the physical pins, the recorded devise, and the lane itself would all have to agree while the people most affected stood there. Benjamin placed the certified survey in the office safe. Then he set Lane 12's first score sheet on the counter with his name in the opening position. At 7 the next morning, the surveyor set a tripod near the loading gate while frost still covered the edge of the parking lot. Sarah opened the rear doors. Benjamin unlocked the office. Landon arrived carrying a canvas folder from the cooperative. Kristen and Melissa came together 10 minutes later. Melissa looked at the empty lot. "Where is everyone?" "The tournament starts at 10, Benjamin said. "You scheduled this during a public event. I scheduled the public event before you threatened a challenge. Kristen pulled her coat tighter. We could do this without spectators. The survey starts outside. The title review happens in the office. Customers won't be part of either. Melissa pointed toward Landon. Then why is he here? Because the survey names the cooperative. Landon offered his hand. Landon Perkins. I know who you are, Melissa said. You were at Dad's funeral. I was also your father's friend for 30 years. The surveyor asked them to clear the loading area. He found the first recorded marker near the roadside corner, beneath several inches of packed dirt. The second stood beside the north fence. Both matched the original parcel survey within a fraction of an inch. The third marker should have been behind lane 12. They entered through the rear service door. Sarah removed the plywood panel and access plate while the surveyor studied the certified copy. He placed his instrument near lane 11, took a reading through the service opening, then crouched inside the narrow chase. Melissa watched every movement. What does that prove? She asked. Nothing yet, the surveyor said. The answer irritated her because it gave no side an advantage. He brushed dust from the concrete behind the pin setter. A round brass head appeared near the outer wall, larger than the screws Bradley had driven along the chalk mark. The surveyor cleaned it with a nylon brush. Original pin, he said. Stamp matches the filed plat. Benjamin leaned into the opening but didn't touch it. Does the line match? He asked. I need the interior distance. The survey showed a measurement beginning at lane 12's foul line. They could not take it while the approach was crowded with equipment for the morning setup, so the surveyor marked the pin location and agreed to return when the first lane was clear. In the office, the title representative compared the survey index with Bradley's recorded devise. Melissa spoke before the representative finished. The estate division used the alley's appraised value. If this file reveals something excluded, the division was based on a mistake. The representative kept reading. Kristen said, We relied on a professional appraisal. An appraisal doesn't transfer land, the representative replied. The recorded devise does. That isn't the issue, Melissa said. It's the issue I'm here to answer. She placed the two legal descriptions side by side. The parcel Bradley devised to Benjamin is the same parcel indexed to this survey. Nothing in the recorded transfer reserves a rear strip to the estate, Kristen, or Melissa. Melissa crossed her arms. You haven't established that a strip exists. No. The surveyor establishes its physical location. I establish what passed if his field marks match the recorded description. Kristen looked at Benjamin. And you arranged all this before telling us. I invited you to every appointment. After you opened the wall came with the building. Melissa set Bradley's document case on the desk. You accepted the alley because it was the low-value property. If that assumption was wrong, fairness requires redistribution. Benjamin looked at her. Would fairness have required redistribution if the repairs cost more? That's different. Why? Because you knew the liabilities. I knew the notices you gave me. You signed. Yes, I signed for the building, the machines, the damage, and whatever duties came with the parcel. Melissa heard the final part. You think there's money? She said. I think Dad preserved a line. That's all the field work has shown. Landon had stayed near the door. He knew more about the practical importance of the truck route than anyone in the room, but he still did not know who owned it. He kept his folder closed. At 9:30, customers began arriving. Benjamin opened the front doors. Sarah checked in teams while he handled shoes and lane assignments. The title representative remained in the office. The surveyor moved his equipment to lane 12's service side. Kristen and Melissa stood near the counter, unwilling to leave before the measurement. The room filled quickly. At 10, Benjamin called the first teams to their lanes. He explained that lane 12 had passed its machine inspection, but had not carried a live ball since the alley closed. I'm throwing the first frame, he told the waiting team. If anything sounds wrong, we stop. Sarah stood at the control desk with her hand near lane 12's stop switch. Benjamin selected a straight house ball. It weighed 14 pounds and had a chipped blue stripe around the finger holes. He wiped dust from the surface, stepped onto the approach, and looked toward the pins. From where he stood, the lane seemed ordinary. The masking unit created the same dark frame around the pins as every other lane. The gutters ran straight. The boards gave no reason for Bradley's measurements. Benjamin took 4 steps and released the ball. It rolled slightly right of center. The sound came too soon. The ball struck the head pin, while Benjamin's body still expected another moment of travel. Pins scattered. The machine swept them, but Sarah had already lifted her hand from the control. "That was early," she said. A bowler waiting behind Benjamin nodded. "That's what I remembered. 12 always got there fast." Melissa looked from the pins to the foul line. It was one ball. Benjamin pressed the reset and sent the same ball down lane 11 from the same starting point. It traveled longer before reaching the rack. The difference was plain enough for the people nearest both lanes to hear. The surveyor stepped onto the approach with a laser measure. He placed it at the foul line and aimed at the center of the head pin position. He checked the reading, reset the device, and measured again. 56 feet, he said. Sarah moved beside him. A regulation lane is 60. The surveyor measured lane 11, 60 feet. Conversation around the concourse faded. Lane 12 was 4 feet shorter than the other 11. The masking unit had hidden the move pin setter. The altered pit and narrow service chase had absorbed the difference behind it. Bradley had kept the foul line in its original position and brought the working end forward. The surveyor returned behind the machine. He measured from the foul line through the pin location to the brass survey pin. Then he compared the distance with Bradley's field notes and the original parcel record. "The interior line matches," he said. He carried the survey onto the approach and laid the certified copy across a table. Benjamin, Sarah, Landon, Kristen, Melissa, and the title representative gathered around it. The surveyor traced the rear corner with one finger. "This access strip runs along the back of the bowling parcel. At lane 12, it cuts toward the building. A standard length lane would have pushed the pin setter and rear service wall about 4 feet into the strip." Sarah looked toward the shortened lane. So Bradley moved the machine forward. He preserved the strip without moving the recorded line. "And the brass pin," Benjamin asked, "marks the inside turn. It matches the original plat and the 2 outside pins." The title representative checked the marked strip against the devise. "It passed with split rail lanes," she said. "The alley owns it." Nobody spoke for several seconds. Landon opened the canvas folder. "The cooperative has used that route for delivery trucks since before Bradley recorded this survey," he said. "We believe the access was informal. We've been trying to secure it because the warehouse proposal would make our other entrance unworkable." Melissa turned toward him. "What does secure mean?" "A written long-term right to use the strip. How much is that worth?" Landon looked at Benjamin, not Melissa. "The cooperative board authorized me to offer up to $240,000 up front for 20 years of guaranteed access. That authorization was for whoever proved control of the workable route. Until this morning, I didn't know that was split rail. The amount moved through the room without anyone repeating it. It would clear the $74,000 due. It would fund the remaining repairs. It would also bind the property for 20 years. What does the alley have to provide?" Benjamin asked. "Lighting along the route, snow removal, pavement maintenance, and access at all delivery hours. The cooperative pays the agreed amount up front. You keep ownership." Sarah studied the strip. "Truck pavement behind the pin setters won't be cheap." "No," Landon said. Bradley understood that. "He kept the route clear, but we never completed an agreement." Kristen gripped the back of a chair. Melissa recovered first. "Nothing gets signed. We're challenging the estate division." The title representative closed her folder. "You may take whatever action your attorney advises. As of today, the recorded owner is Benjamin. This value was hidden." Benjamin looked at the short lane. Bradley had not hidden money. He had preserved a useful piece of land and left its future owner the work of proving it. Melissa stepped toward him. "You need to agree that this belongs in the estate." "No. You would have received almost nothing without that survey. I received the survey with the property." Kristen said, "Benjamin, don't make this permanent." He understood what she meant. Signing an access agreement would make the land's purpose real. Refusing redistribution would make the family break harder to deny. Benjamin turned to Landon. "Give the full offer to the title company. Include every maintenance duty and the exact access hours." Landon handed over the folder. Melissa said his name sharply. Benjamin faced her. "You can review the proof. You can challenge it. You cannot direct this property." Around them, the tournament waited. Lane 12's 10 pins had reset beneath the warm masking light, 4 feet nearer than anyone had known. Benjamin picked up the blue-striped ball and handed it to the first scheduled bowler. "Now you know the lane," he said. "Decide whether you want to play it." The bowler took the ball. Benjamin removed his own name from the opening position, returned to the counter, and let Lane 12 begin its first full game without pretending it was the same as the others. The first scheduled bowler stood at the foul line and looked back at Benjamin. "Does this game count?" she asked. Benjamin checked the tournament rules he had printed. They assumed 12 regulation lanes. Lane 12 was safe and functional, but it wasn't regulation length. "No," he said. "Not on 12? Several people groaned. They had waited to bowl, and the other lanes were already full. Benjamin raised his voice enough for the room. "We'll move this team into the next open lane. Anyone who wants to try 12 can do it after official scoring. No charge." The delay put the tournament 40 minutes behind schedule. Benjamin refunded one entry when a bowler couldn't stay late. He also rewrote the rotation by hand, while Sarah kept the other 11 lanes moving. The discovery had made the alley valuable. It had not made every immediate problem disappear. Lane 12 stayed lit. Between rounds, people stood at its approach and tried to see the missing 4 feet. Most couldn't until someone rolled a ball. Then they heard it. Landon remained through the first round. He answered no questions about the offer, except to say that the cooperative would deal directly with the recorded owner. The title representative took the original term sheet for review. The surveyor completed his field report and left. Kristen sat alone near the snack counter. Melissa had gone outside to call her attorney. When she returned, she collected Bradley's leather case and stopped beside Kristen. "Are you coming?" she asked. Kristen looked at Benjamin behind the counter. "Not yet." Melissa's face closed. "You know what he's doing," she said. "Yes, he's keeping all of it. It was left to him." "That wasn't what you said this morning." Kristen folded her hands. "This morning, I thought the survey might belong to the estate separately. And now I heard the title company." Melissa looked toward the crowded lanes. "You're choosing him because people are watching." "No, I'm staying because I left too quickly the last time." Benjamin heard that, though Kristen hadn't spoken loudly. Melissa did not apologize to him. She did not congratulate him. She walked out carrying the same document case she had held on the morning he received the alley. The tournament ended after 5. Benjamin gave the winning team a modest cash prize and free lane time for the following month. Then he opened lane 12 for anyone who wanted to try it. The line reached the rental counter. Sarah adjusted the oil by hand because the automatic lane machine assumed a full regulation length. She marked the shorter setting in the new maintenance log. "Bradley must have done this every time," Benjamin said. "He kept separate oil notes for 12. I thought it was because of the boards. He let people bowl it without telling them. He may have thought it didn't matter for local games. It mattered today." Sarah capped the oil container. "Then you do it differently." Benjamin printed a temporary sign. "Lane 12 is 4 feet shorter than regulation. Recreational play only." He mounted it beside the ball return. Nobody laughed at the lane after that. They treated it as the odd thing it was, part machine, part boundary marker, and still useful. When the last customers left, Kristen remained at her table. Benjamin locked the front door but did not turn off the lane lights. "What do you need?" he asked. She reached into her handbag and placed a house key on the table. "The lock wasn't changed last month," she said. "I told Melissa it was." Benjamin looked at the key. "Why?" "I didn't want you coming in without calling. You could have asked me to call. I wanted the house settled, and I made it unsettled." "You reminded me of Bradley. Every room had something of his, and you knew where he kept things." Benjamin sat across from her. "You put my bag outside." "Yes." She did not soften the word. Kristen looked toward the lanes. "I was afraid you would question the division before Melissa finished transferring the business accounts. I wanted everything completed, so you hurried me." "Yes." The admission came too late to prevent harm. It still changed what stood between them. "Did you know about the access strip?" he asked. "No." "I knew Bradley refused to move the rear wall. I thought it was stubbornness. Did Melissa know?" "Not from me." "Did she arrange the appraisal because Evan wanted the site?" "Yes." "She believed a warehouse sale was the only realistic outcome. I agreed because I wanted the property out of the estate." Kristen removed a folded paper from her bag. It was a signed statement describing the day Bradley refused to let the developer move anything behind lane 12. She had included the date, who was present, and the words she remembered. The surveyor said a witness statement could go with the field report, she said. "It doesn't change ownership, I know. It authenticated Bradley's past choice. It did not create the right or rescue Benjamin." Kristen understood that. She also brought Bradley's green jacket. Benjamin accepted it without thanking her. "You can call before coming here," he said. "You don't have a key." Kristen nodded. "That isn't forgiveness," he added. "I know that too." She left the old house key on the table. Benjamin pushed it back toward her. "It's your house," he said. She closed her hand around it and left. 3 days later, Melissa's attorney sent a written demand for redistribution and requested that Benjamin delay the access agreement. The letter did not contain a filed court challenge. The title company responded with the recorded devise, certified survey, field pin report, and its ownership finding. It also noted that reopening the entire estate division could require reviewing the values and transfers of every distributed asset, including Martin equipment and the savings. Melissa did not file. She sent Benjamin a message instead. "I still believe this was unfair," he replied once. "I understand your position. All future property communication stays in writing." Their relationship did not improve. It became narrower and more honest. Melissa stopped presenting offers for the alley. Benjamin stopped treating her response as a measure of whether his choices were sound. The cooperative agreement required more work than Landon's first explanation had covered. Benjamin met with him at the rear loading area. They walked the access strip from Cottonwood Road to the cooperative gate. The pavement was cracked near the turn. One light pole leaned toward the fence. Snow from the alley roof would have to be directed away from truck tires. "You'll maintain all of this?" Landon asked. "For 20 years. The agreement allows us access day and night. I want delivery schedules when possible. Emergency loads can come any time. We can provide schedules. We can't guarantee weather. Neither can I." Benjamin requested barriers protecting the building corner and a posted speed limit. The cooperative agreed to install the barriers, but pavement, snow removal, and lighting remained Split Rail's responsibility. Landon stopped beside the brass pin, now marked with a protective collar. "Bradley could have sold this access years ago," he said. "Why didn't he?" He didn't trust the old board to preserve the alley. They wanted permanent control. He wanted the route used, not taken. Benjamin looked at the trucks waiting beyond the cooperative gate. 20 years is still a long time. Yes. If Split Rail fails, the obligation remains. Yes. The money removed immediate danger. The agreement created a duty that would outlast any good opening weekend. Benjamin signed only after the title company added language preserving his ownership and limiting the cooperative's use to the marked strip. Landon signed for the board. Sarah witnessed the signatures because she understood exactly where the machinery ended and the access route began. The $240,000 arrived through the title company. Benjamin did not see it as loose cash in his account. The closing statement divided it immediately. $74,000 went to the county for taxes, penalties, and required code work. Outstanding contractors were paid. Insurance was funded. A maintenance reserve was set aside for pavement, lighting, and snow. The remainder could restore the alley if he spent it carefully. It could not support careless decisions. Benjamin paid Sarah the $680 Bradley had owed her. She checked the transfer on her phone. "You kept track." "I said I would. He said he would too. I wrote it down. That helped." They replaced the temporary shop agreement with a 5-year lease at a modest rent. Sarah retained her customers and equipment. Split Rail provided utilities and access. Neither could end the arrangement without proper notice except for safety or non-payment. Sarah signed and handed him the pen. "Now I can order parts without wondering whether the door changes again," she said. "Order what Lane 12 needs. It needs a permanent sign, a custom oil setting, and bowlers who can read. Start with the sign." The following morning, trucks arrived with lumber, ceiling panels, light fixtures, plumbing pipe, and new carpet tiles. Benjamin stood inside the open front doors checking deliveries against invoices. He paid each deposit from the restoration account and recorded every amount. Behind him, all 12 lane lights were on. Lane 12 remained shorter, clearly marked and untouched at its rear line. Above the loading door, an electrician removed the leaning light that would guide cooperative trucks through winter. The electrician set the new pole in concrete 20 feet from the loading wall. Its light faced downward, covering the access strip without shining into the apartment windows. Benjamin checked it after dark with Landon. A cooperative truck entered from Cottonwood Road, followed the painted edge, and cleared the building corner by several feet. The protective barriers guided it through the narrow turn. The driver stopped at the cooperative gate. "Plenty of room," Landon said, "for this truck. It's our widest." Benjamin walked the route with a flashlight. He found one dark area near the rear fence and added another fixture to the work list. The agreement had paid enough to improve the route properly. It had not made good maintenance automatic. Benjamin still had to notice what was missing. Inside, contractors repaired the upstairs pipe and replaced the damaged wall. Water reached the apartment kitchen for the first time since he arrived. Benjamin turned on the faucet, let it run clear, then washed his coffee cup in his own sink. He bought a mattress and carried it upstairs with Sarah. "Turn it," she said at the bedroom door. "I am turning it. The other way. There are still only two ways, and you're still choosing wrong." They got the mattress onto the frame without damaging the fresh paint. Benjamin covered it with the clean blanket Bradley had sealed in the closet. He bought sheets that evening instead of sleeping directly under the old blanket and calling the room finished. The apartment changed slowly. The boxes disappeared. Bradley's green jacket hung beside Benjamin's work coat near the stairs. The faded floor help name tag remained on the desk, but Benjamin no longer wore it. Below, Sarah organized the repair room according to her own work. She labeled drawers, replaced the worn vise, and brought customer equipment out of storage. Benjamin asked before entering when the door was closed. The first time he knocked, Sarah looked at him through the glass. "You own the room," she said. "You lease it. You can come in, I know." She opened the door. This is a strange amount of progress for one knock. A county inspector returned after the ceiling. Plumbing, fire system, and remaining exits were complete. He walked every public area, tested the expanded emergency lighting, and reviewed Lane 12's permanent sign. The sign explained its length in plain language. Official tournament scoring used the other 11 lanes. Lane 12 remained available for casual games, practice, and anyone who wanted to adjust. The inspector approved full occupancy. He signed the form at the front counter and left. No speech followed. Benjamin taped the approval beside the earlier 5-lane notice for one day, then filed both in the office. The old notice mattered because it showed where the building had started. It did not need to greet every customer forever. The restored snack counter opened with coffee, hot sandwiches, bottled drinks, and food supplied through the cooperative. Benjamin kept the menu small enough to manage. Landon arranged the first cooperative member, night after the pavement work was finished. Adults who spent their days sorting produce, scheduling deliveries, and managing accounts filled the lanes. Some had never bowled. Sarah showed them how to choose a ball while Benjamin worked the counter. Landon tried lane 12. His first ball reached the pins so quickly that he remained at the foul line with his hand still extended. "That feels wrong," he said. "It is shorter," Benjamin replied. "I read the sign. Reading and bowling are different." Landon tried again and adjusted his steps. The second ball struck 7 pins. "Bradley let me bowl this lane for years," he said. "Never told me. He left you to figure out a lot. He left you more." Benjamin looked toward the access lights visible through the rear service window. "He left me the bill, too." Landon laughed. "That sounds like him." Autumn reached Thermopolis with cold nights and wind that carried leaves against the loading gate. Benjamin cleared the drains before they clogged. He hired pavement crews to seal the access strip, then stood with Landon during the final walkthrough. The cooperative's first scheduled delivery after the work arrived at dawn. Its tires stayed inside the painted line. The driver used the rear gate without blocking customer parking. The route worked because Bradley had protected it, and because Benjamin maintained it. Neither part could replace the other. Kristen called before her first visit. "I have another box of Bradley's alley papers," she said. "May I bring it by?" "What's in it?" "Old supply invoices and league photographs. Nothing legal." "Come after 6. She arrived at 6:15 and waited outside until Benjamin opened the door. That was the first test. The second came when she asked to see the apartment. Benjamin hesitated, then led her upstairs. Kristen looked at the repaired kitchen, the desk, and Bradley's jacket near the stairs. "He wore that when he wanted people to think he wasn't cold," she said. Benjamin touched the worn cuff. "He did that with a lot of things." Kristen nodded. She did not ask for the jacket. She did not move anything. Before leaving, she placed the box beside the office safe and wrote her phone number on the inventory sheet. "I found those in the attic," she said. "If I find more, I'll call. Do that." Their conversations remained careful. Kristen didn't regain a key or an unannounced place in his days. Sometimes she came for coffee. Once, she bowled 2 games alone on lane 8. Repair came through repeated small permissions, not through the statement she had signed. Melissa stayed away for nearly 3 months. Then a motor at the building's rear exhaust unit failed. The replacement was stocked by Martin Equipment. Benjamin could have ordered it from another supplier at a higher price, but avoiding her would have made the alley pay for a family boundary it hadn't created. He called the business, Melissa answered. I need a replacement motor, he said. He gave her the model number. I have one in stock. Send an invoice. There was a pause. I can put it on Dad's old internal account. No. Split Rail is a customer. That costs more. It keeps the records clear. Melissa emailed the invoice. Benjamin paid it. An employee delivered the motor the following morning. A week later, Melissa came to the alley and waited near the front counter until Benjamin finished with a customer. The motor fit? She asked. Yes. She looked toward the 11 regulation lanes and the shorter 12th. You could have asked for the family rate. There isn't one. There used to be. There also used to be one owner for both businesses. Melissa absorbed that without arguing. I'm not going to challenge the devise, she said. I know. The filing period passed. I decided before that. You didn't tell me. I'm telling you now. Benjamin waited. She seemed to expect relief or gratitude. Thank you for telling me, he said. I still think the division became uneven. It was uneven when I accepted the debt. You got the better result. I did the work after the division. Melissa looked down at the counter. I should have shown you who ordered the appraisal before you signed. Yes. I thought the warehouse sale would fix the problem. For who? She didn't answer. That was as far as she could go that evening. Benjamin didn't carry her the rest of the way. If you want a bowl, lane 6 is open, he said. I'm not dressed for it. We rent shoes. Melissa almost smiled. She rented a pair and bowled one game. She paid the posted price. She left without asking to see the survey or the accounts. Winter gave the access agreement its first serious test. Snow fell through the night and covered the truck route before the cooperative's morning delivery. Benjamin woke at 4:40 to the weather alert. He dressed upstairs, went down through the dark alley, and started the snowblower. The machine clogged twice in the heavy snow. His gloves soaked through. Sarah arrived before 6 with a shovel and found him clearing the turn near the brass pin. You could have called, she said. You have your own work. My work is inside the building this route helps fund. Together, they cleared the marked strip. Benjamin spread grit near the gate and checked both access lights. The cooperative truck arrived at 6:30 and passed safely. That morning cost fuel, labor, salt, and sleep. The $240,000 agreement did not shovel its own pavement. After the truck left, Sarah made coffee in the snack area. They sat at the counter with wet gloves spread near the radiator. Still worth it? She asked. Benjamin looked through the front windows at fresh snow beyond the parking lot. Yes, he said. Ask again next storm. By spring, league nights filled most of the week. Sarah's repair schedule extended several days ahead. The cooperative used the meeting room beside the snack counter once a month, and its delivery route remained open behind the building. Benjamin kept a separate account for access maintenance. He reviewed it with Landon every quarter. He also kept his own maintenance log. Lane 12 received its measurements on schedule, and the rear line never moved. On the anniversary of the reopening, Benjamin held another tournament using 11 lanes for official scores. Lane 12 hosted a separate short lane game afterward. The winner received an old wooden bowling pin painted by Sarah. Kristen attended and called first. Melissa supplied 2 replacement belts at the regular customer price. Neither woman was given control of the event. Neither was excluded from behaving differently. After closing, Benjamin carried the day's deposit to the office safe. Sarah shut down the repair room equipment and left through the front entrance. See you Tuesday, she said. Not Monday? I have 3 service calls in Casper. Independent livelihood. It's in the agreement. She waited until he locked the outer handle, then crossed the cleared parking lot to her van. If stories about young people rebuilding a life after family betrayal matter to you, subscribe and return for the next inheritance story. Benjamin checked the rear access light from the service window. The pavement was clear, the protective barriers stood straight, and the brass survey pin remained covered at the corner. He turned off the snack counter lights and walked the concourse once. 11 regulation lanes stretched into the quiet. Lane 12 ended 4 feet sooner, its permanent sign fixed beside the return. Bradley's maintenance log rested in the safe beside Benjamin's newer one. Upstairs, water moved through the repaired pipes. A small lamp burned near the apartment window. Bradley's green jacket hung beside Benjamin's coat, not as proof of who belonged there, but because that was where Benjamin had chosen to keep it. He set the alarm, listened for the final pinsetter fan to stop, and climbed halfway up the apartment stairs. Then he remembered the front lock and went back down. Benjamin locked the restored front doors from inside, while warm lane lights glowed below his upstairs apartment.